Hey, everybody, and welcome to Motorcycles and Podcakes. I have got a legend in the house today. It is freaking pretty rad. I've met this person, a couple times now, and every time it has just been hysterical. It has been full of amazing conversation. And once I started this podcast, she was one of the very first people I was like, yes, you absolutely need to be on this podcast. And weirdly enough, she was like, okay, I could do that. And she's from up north where it snows 85,000 days of the year. And I know her as Super Rad Chick, but y'all know her as Misti Hurst. What's up, Chick?
Hello, everyone. I'm so impressed with your setup. It's so very official.
Well, thank you. I think.
Yeah, looks
No, I
great.
am super. Yeah, I'm super excited that you decided to come on here because you and I met April last year for the first time. And I remember we were at your sister's house eating hot dogs with chips, and we're sitting around a campfire. And you and I just we had a little bit of a conversation, and my mind was going at 5,000 miles an hour as we talked because you're telling me everything about you, and I'm like already thinking of starting this podcast, and I was just like, oh my god, this would be amazing. And then the more I've got to know you and the more we've hung out in person, the more I'm just like, okay, this is one of the raddest people in the history of mankind. So I'm thrilled for you being here. So thanks.
Well, thank you. It's been a really fun adventure, and I've loved getting to know you and the crew. And yeah, it's been super fun. So I'm stoked.
Super rad sauce. So this is basically a long form little podcast here. We have an organic conversation. Um, and I kind of have a little bit of a cookie cutter template, if you will, right? So we usually like to kind of go back in time to little Misty, and I know your sister too, and that could be interesting right there. So why don't you start off a little bit by just telling us a little bit about you and growing up and where you're from and all that kind of stuff, like pre-motorcycle.
Oh boy, little Misty. Okay, how much can I talk about my sister? This will be really fun. Um, Okay, so little Misty, I'm the oldest of three of us. There's myself, my brother Steven in the middle, and Summer. Yeah, I am older. Thank you very much. Reminder, yes. Summer loves that. Um, and what can I say? I don't know. I was just, my mom says I came out running and I didn't stop. And that's sort of how it feels with my life. I really enjoy movement. I maybe not enjoy movement all the time. I need it. It's necessary. I have to move. I did all sports growing up, you name it, and I did every sport except dirt biking or motorcycling because my family didn't ride growing up. But on the team, volleyball, basketball, cross country, my best sport was long distance running, cross country, and track and field. I think was probably my best, but I did all of them, and just always really adventurous, willing to jump off the cliffs, willing to try whatever it was that people were trying. I skied from a young age. I started snowboarding. I swear I was one of the first women to ever get on a snowboard. My best friend Erin and I at 14, 13 were snowboarding way back when, and people would be shouting from the chairlifts like, "There's a chick! Those are girls! Girls are snowboarding!" um, and she went off to be an Olympic athlete, and we had some fun snowboard races, way back when. And I was always sort of looking for my sport. It was like I loved so many of the sports and I was good at a lot of them, but nothing really felt like 100% it until I got on a motorcycle.
Oh
Uh,
man,
yeah.
that's pretty cool. So that's a lot of sports. Like I feel like I played a lot of sports with the basketball and the football. I ran a little bit of track and cross country. Well, just the more the distance things in the spring on track, I guess, like the 800 or whatever. But man, you really hit it down. I did a little bit of skiing, but I was never a quote unquote knuckle dragger. That what my friends like to call themselves.
Yeah, no, we were skiing, like my brother, sister, and I were all very close in age. So my mom, had 3 kids under 3 years old, and we all started skiing at a very young age. And we'd be bombing down the hill, 3 little tots, our parents chasing us on the ski hill. And so, skiing, and then I did gymnastics. Um, Funny little side story: when I was really, really young, I did gymnastics, and they pulled my parents aside. I don't know, I was like 6 years old or something. And they said, we really want Misty to go into the competitive program. We want to, really encourage her gymnastics. We think she's got some great talent. And my mom was like, yeah, great. And then they were like, so she'll need to quit all the other sports. My mom was like, she's 6 years old. Like,
Well,
no,
yeah, right.
no. And I'm super thankful, because I feel like if I'd been pushed into that sort of box and only done that one sport, I would have missed out on so much of the just the training and the learning that goes on when you're a young child. You're a sponge, you can absorb so much. And so being able to try gymnastics and diving and soccer, and I think I even petitioned to have a girls football team at the school, or to not a girls team, but to play with the boys, because I wanted to do football. It all works together to grow not only your mind but your body, like how you are able to present yourself in the world, and then how I was able to transform that into riding a motorcycle. I think really stemmed from all of the sports and that the athletics that I did when I was a kid, and fairly high level competition too in a lot of those sports. um yeah, my
Right.
whole life was sports.
I think that's one thing that, unless you have played sports or been around them a lot, you don't really understand what kind of values that actually creates into a young person growing up. Whether it's a team sport, which I played a lot of, and then my oldest son, Justice, I mean, he was team sport, football, basketball, played at a very high level growing up all the way through high school. And then, cleaning out his car one day, and he got a new car, so we're gonna pass this one down to Braden, our youngest, and I'm cleaning out the trunk, and he has all these letters stuffed between the wheel well of, like, all these colleges that are interested in him coming to play basketball and football, and he was like, "I don't want to." "What?" I totally, it was like, "What are you doing, kid?" But growing up and then coaching high school football for, a decade or whatever, one of the head coaches was always like, "Football is a life lesson 1 yard at a time," and I think that's really through all sports. You learn how to just kind of dig deep, that whole cliche. You learn how to, share essentially, be a better teammate and builds character. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then,
there's so much,
yeah,
so
yeah, my
much
youngest son,
from all this, like every sport can give you something different, right? Which is why
yeah,
I see the way the world is going these days, where they're pushing kids to specialize, and they're
right,
we have a problem here with hockey, where 20, 30 years ago, hockey used to be the winter sport, and then the kids would play other sports in the summer and the spring. And now there's a push to, like, oh, well, we can't miss a season of hockey. They have to play hockey all year round. And so now you've got summer camps and spring camps and hockey, hockey, hockey.
right,
And there, actually, Wayne Gretzky wrote an incredible article about the fact that what you're doing is you're taking away complementary sports, complementary skills, things that make hockey players better because they played soccer in the summer or they played a different sport, right? So yes,
yeah,
there's the repetition of hockey, and hockey is the skill or the sport, but you can improve your visuals if you play a different sport. You can learn different things. Your body reacts, and you just become a much more well-rounded person when you train, cross train. So
absolutely.
it's something that I really take with my kids as well, is trying to help them find what their passion is, but also encourage them to maintain multiple disciplines so that they benefit from all of the skills that they're getting. Um,
I really think you just said it really well. The multiple skill set, you know. Um, I think it just makes you more rounded. We don't have the hockey down in my area of the United States. You know, I think that's more Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin kind of thing for down here. But that's basketball for us. We have the AAU. It's year round. They travel and go all over, and that's what Justice did. And it was just on a traveling team, and it's just almost every day, and then every weekend you're playing tournaments year round, and then the only time he would stop is right before daily doubles for football, and then all the kids would go to football, and it was always really funny, the first basketball game back after football season, because in high school especially, the team was pretty good, so they would go really deep in the playoffs or win state, and, first game back, they're trying to play basketball, be finesse, and it's all the guys just used to hitting. They're coming out forearm shivers and shoulder blocks and stuff, and it's just like everybody's fouling out. It's like, welcome back, kids.
that's
Bring it right.
hilarious. Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
it also prevents, burnout, right? Like, you're starting to get
Yeah.
kids at
Hmm.
15 years old being like, peace out, I'm done with this, because they're exhausted. All they've done is play one thing over and over and over again, right? So,
Yeah, 100%. And I got the perfect example of that is Braden, my youngest son, was cycling, and he was doing something like, man, I think he was pushing, I mean, year round, but races somewhere around 80 races a year, 80 plus races a year,
80
and
races.
that's between road criteriums and time trials, right? So you have those 3 disciplines all within the cycling, and then he was doing somewhere around 80, give or take 5, depending on the year. And then winter training, road riding all the time, always training in the wet and the heat and just whenever. We went to a race in Central Oregon, and it was actually for the state championship. And, I remember standing at the finish line, and it was this long hill to the finish line, and we kept hearing on the radio that he was, I mean, 3, 4 minutes ahead of everybody, and it was, like, awesome. It's like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is his race. He's gonna win that state championship or whatever." And I remember coming up top of the hill, seeing when the race, and his hands are up. He's like, "Yeah, okay, I win." And got up there, got his jersey, his state championship jersey and his medal and everything, and we got all the bikes on the car, and we're getting ready to head home, and he goes, "I'm done." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "My legs are shot, my mind is shot. I'm done for a while." It's like, "Okay."
Wow.
You know? He knew, and that was his last race, and that was a
Wow.
while ago. So, the burnout is real.
Yeah, there's a balance for sure, because I do respect and value people that have found their thing at a young age. I missed my sport at a young age. I think everything led me to get there, but sometimes I do look back and think, what could I have done if I had started riding at a young age? I see my
Oh,
kids
yeah.
and how talented they are. Like, my 14-year-old can kick my ass now on a motorcycle because he started at 3, 4 years old and has ridden. Like, he's got 10 years of motorcycle riding experience. Whereas, I was 24 years old, and then, I went pro at 30. Like, you're over the hill. It's too late.
Oh my gosh, and that's something I'm actually really looking forward to getting into here in a little bit, is the riding career. Um, with the sports, you said you got summer, and I forget your brother's name. What
Steven.
is it?
Steven.
Steven. Was there any kind of just, competition between everybody growing up playing sports? Like, on the back, like, for us, like, it was basketball. We'd go out in the driveway and just, man, it was like the national championship every single time we're playing one-on-one, you know?
Yeah, we never, like, we were just very, very different kids. And so, my mom says I came out running and didn't stop, whereas my brother was, you know, she could sit him in a corner and he would just sit in the corner. And then he's very meticulous. He's calm. He's a great artist. He can paint. You know, he was sporty for
Nice.
sure, but we didn't jive. We weren't, I was busy. I was like, I am out of the house at 6:30 in the morning. I don't come home until 9 p.m. Like I was just had no time for my brother and sister. And you know, Summer was doing her thing. She did you know, various sports growing up, but a little bit less, and for sure had her friend group. And we just didn't really mingle as kids together. And if there was competition, it wasn't between the three of us. I mean, I was just competitive as all hell against my own self and about everybody else I was going to beat. So it didn't matter about my brother and sister.
Oh, I totally get that. I totally get that. I have an older sister and she's 5 years older. So growing up, I mean, she was so far ahead. The only really cool thing about it is, you know, me being like 12, 13 years old, she had some really hot older friends. That was pretty much the thing, you know. But it was basically like my dad and I. Like I didn't beat my dad in one-on-one until I was like 16, you
Mm,
know, because he's Mr. Basketball too. And then just everybody in the neighborhood would just come down. That was my competition growing up, but not too much with the family. Um, whatever, right?
right.
Just try to get more gooder. So I remember a conversation we had at Critters Camp Out. It actually wasn't our conversation. I was just like listening to, I believe you and Critter talking about like music and concerts you guys have been to, and I was just like, holy crap, a lot of the same stuff I was going to, you were going to, and a lot of the same bands and stuff. I was like, wait a minute, this is pretty rad. So I was a little surprised by that, to be honest with you. I don't know why, but I always kind of thought you were like a boots and pants kind of girl.
No, man, I've got some music. I got some things that'll surprise you. The sun is like blasting in my eyes. Is it bothersome on the screen or
No,
is it fine?
no, it gives you a cool lighting conflict on there, so it's all
Perfect.
good. Yeah.
So the music thing. So growing up, even though I was super, super sporty and always did sports, there's a very introspective, deep, solitude seeking side to me that a lot of people don't know or really understand. And I would lock myself in my room and I would sit at my super special desk that I found, an antique roll down desk, and I would write. I would put candles on, I would play some, you know, music, and I would write poetry and write letters and write random things. I would just sit at my desk and write. And music became such a soothing way to get myself in the mood, right? It could ramp me up, it could calm me down. I would often play brooding, sad, heart-wrenching music and cry in my room as a 15-year-old girl or whatever. And it was very important to me, but it was also very um what's the word? Not popular, mainstream music, maybe not, because my mom. So I used to listen to all the classics. So in the car, my mom was a big music person and influenced a lot of my early music. So you know, Zeppelin and Queen, and we listened to Paul McCartney and um, I'm going to lose all it now. I'm being put on the spot. All the old classic rocks,
Yeah.
David Bowie. Um, we used to just rock out in my mom's car and sing all these songs. She would even come to the school sometimes at lunch, and we would listen to the Pointer Sisters and dance around the car, and it was like
How to jump in.
super super fun. But it was very mainstream music, right? And and then when I was 16, I met a person that would become like instrumental in my life. He was in grade 12. He's a dear friend of mine. We were basically high school sweethearts, and very, very different person who invited me into a world I had no idea existed. So he was interested in exploring the occult. He was sort of goth in the
Yeah.
goth realm. All this fascinating music that I had no idea, dark wave, industrial, ambient, occult music, and opened my eyes to this whole new world. So at 16, his name was Ari, and at 16 he would pick me up in his red Nissan NX with the T-top, and the
Rad.
license plate said Vampire, and he would have these black driving gloves and a black leather jacket, and he would pick me up at high school like the sporty girl who'd never had a boyfriend until like 16. And it was such a bizarre, I don't know, deviation from my regular life. My friends thought he was a little like great, nice person, but like a little different, a little odd. He would make me these incredible mixtapes that I would put in my car. And my friends were just like, what is this shit we're listening to? Like, what
Right.
is it? And it was, he just brought me into, The Cure, 9 Inch Nails, Ministry, Frontline Assembly, Front Two for Two, Coil, Tones on Tail, the Sisters of Mercy. I mean, you name it, and all of this musical influence came in. And at this time, he introduced me to the world of Dungeons and Dragons and Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, cool.
So in the midst of me being super sporty, grow up in Lions Bay, sort of drive your dad's Acura to school girl, I was also like sneaking out and playing Vampire the Masquerade until all hours of the evening and listening to this dark music, and then driving home to Lions Bay, in the days where the road was like a single lane road, dark, no other cars. And I'd just been playing this terrifying game of Vampire the Masquerade. Now I had to drive
Right.
home. And we used to go downtown. Like, I never went downtown as my sheltered little life, right? And then he would take me to this place, Benny's Bagels, and we would just have these intense, deep philosophical conversations about life and paranormal events and ghosts and life after death, and did we believe in vampires, and music. He was so fascinating in the music that he introduced me to. And we ended up, when we moved to Victoria, we ended up actually before we moved to Victoria, we had a radio show at UBC. So he was really into music and wanted to learn radio. And we ended up applying to get just a show, and it was called Laced in Darkness. And we ran this show for, I think, like a year. It was the 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. time slot once a week.
Holy
And
moly.
yeah, it was called Laced in Darkness with Ariak and Raven. And
Hey, Raven.
I know he's digging up all these old episodes that we used to do, and he's gonna relaunch them or reshare them, or I don't know. I'm gonna listen to them in a
Oh my gosh. You
Yeah,
better let me know when these things drop. I would love to listen to that.
for sure. So
It's
that's a
funny
very
because
long-winded answer to your question about music.
that's a perfect answer, actually, and it really lets us know kind of where you're coming from with that. Because again, like my sister being older, and then me being this, jock, if you will, I kind of had these two personas in high school, right? So I played music and I loved music. So I was like in the band class and, all of this. But then I was also the basketball football guy, So it's like, and I'm going to say it here first. I had a power mullet for a long time. That's right. It was
Hey,
amazing.
mullets are coming back.
Amazing.
Everybody has
Well, no,
mullets.
they are back
Yes,
in
they are.
fury. Holy moly. But, I remember, I must have been, like, around the 3rd grade, and again, my sister is older, and my mom lived in this house, this really old, kind of a rustic house, and I remember walking out of my bedroom upstairs, and as soon as I'd walk out, there was a little bathroom on my left, and when I mean little bathroom, I mean it's like you gotta try to shimmy your way into it, it's so small, and my sister was in there doing her hair. Now, mind you, this is, like, '80s, so the hair is 15 feet wide and at least that tall, and she's, like, on her 15th or 16th can of Aquanet getting it to stay, right? And so she's like and she's called me shorty since, like, the dawn of time. I don't remember ever her saying, "Ian," like, "Hey, shorty." So I remember walking by and she's like, "I want you to listen to this." Okay. So she presses play and on the cassette tape, people, cassettes back then,
Mhm.
and I just remember this really kind of classical, weird music coming out, right? And I'm just starting to play music too. So I'm kind of trying to pick up on some things. And I'm kind of looking at her like, what are you playing for me? Right. Because she is all about like Judas Priest and Dawkins and Rat and, all these bands at that time. Right. And so I'm like, "What are you playing for me?" And then it's like, there's this chord at the end and it fades out, and then there's this like distortion chord coming in, and it was Metallica's Fight Fire with Fire. And I was
Yeah.
like, I was hooked. I'm like, I'm a metalhead from this point on. I like it. So you move forward. Yeah, totally. So moving forward and stuff, I was always like hanging out with all these people that are like, "Oh my God, boy bands are awesome." And I'm like, yeah, put Slayer on, put some Megadeth on or something.
Yeah.
So it was always kind of really funny, but then I can go with my mom or whatever, and we would go to like the symphony, and I would just be like, "This, this is freaking awesome." So the
Awesome.
music, and then you started talking about like Ministry and stuff, and I remember like seeing Ministry and Al Jurgensen walking by, and I'm like, dude, like not walking by and going to the show, like they were in town, and I was downtown
Oh,
going to the show, and he was walking down the street going back to the club, and I was like,
oh,
I
that's
know
cool.
you. That kind of stuff. So when you started talking about all these concerts and things you've been to, I'm like, yeah, I saw that tour.
Well, I think too, like
Freaking awesome.
we grew up, like especially, in the early 90s, like there was such a movement with the grunge,
Mhm.
and it was so different that it really played a role in so much of our lives. I mean, I was 16
Oh,
years
yeah.
old and we were listening to, Pearl Jam and like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog,
Yeah.
all the other grunge, Nirvana, all of those bands, which was such a step away from music, I think, and how it had been in the past, and it was so raw and real that it's so powerful to go back and listen to those bands nowadays. Like I have a playlist which is like 90s grunge, right? And it's just so cool. And a couple years ago, I think you were hearing the conversation I was talking about a couple years ago. Like sometimes I try to set a theme for the year, as like what I want to accomplish or what I'm going to focus on. And one year I was like, you know what? I don't go to enough concerts. Like I like concerts. I don't like spending the money for them, but whenever I go, I come back and go, that was totally worth it. I love concerts. So there was one year that I said, I'm going to see as many concerts as I can. And I lucked out and I got Sting tickets. Sting has been one of my favorites for like ever. And I got Sting tickets. He played at the Commodore. And the Commodore is like, I don't know, maximum 1,000 people or something. It's this tiny little
Wow.
club. And this was like 4 years ago. And he released a new album and he really wanted to do a tour where he went back to sort of that intimate vibe feel, and he wanted to play for a much smaller audience, and I couldn't believe that I got these tickets for this show. So I've seen him on in giant, filling stadiums, and then I got to see him play in this tiny little pub, which was amazing. And then I went and saw Cat Empire, which is just like big band, high energy, unbelievable, like just you're just dancing the whole time. And then I saw Tool, which
Oh,
anytime
yeah.
you can see Tool in concert,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I saw Frontline Assembly, I saw Depeche Mode, and they put on the most incredible show. And these guys are old now. right?
I know. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, music in general has always been a huge part of who I am. And it was really formed at, younger with my mom. And then at that 16-year-old age when I was so impressionable and just was able to break out. And I really value that lesson that I learned in my life to push outside of what is normal or comfortable or what everybody else listens to, right? I gained so much confidence from being able to say to my friends, well, I don't care if you don't like it. This is really special music to
Right.
me. I really like it. And music, it brings you back so much. It triggers memories instantly. And I can play a song and just be like, whoa, that brought me right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, for me too, like a lot of the music, growing up, I was really like, I'll just use like Iron Maiden for an example, like stories in their music, right? So the lyrics are telling you a really cool story. And I was really, really drawn to storylines and I learned a lot. I remember actually, again, listening to an Iron Maiden song, The Trooper, and not knowing this big battle and stuff and going to my history teacher and then sitting down after class and her going, "Okay, this is what the lyrics mean," right? And tells me about, like, the Russians and all this stuff. I was like, "Okay, that's cool." So it's like a learning opportunity, right? So I fast forward, then you have friends that are, like, hanging out with their girls now, and they're like, "Oh my god, New Kids on the Block." And it was just like, what are they even this makes no sense. And that was one of the things with music. I didn't really care if the music was not my style, but they had to have something interesting to say for me to kind of pick up on it. And for whatever reason, and I think you and I might be a little bit in the same boat here that we're so chipper and just extroverts and just, "Hey, everybody, full on all the time, that the darker music is more taking us on the other side of us, right? And so some of those darker lyrics and your journey with, your journey as Raven going through and, just me, like I said, I would listen to like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's the whole point a lot of times is like, and I think
yeah,
you really, I don't know that anyone has really verbalized it like that, but I think that's really a good way to explain it in that, yeah, I am extroverted. I'm energetic. I'm busy. I'm constantly putting my energy out there. And every once in a while, it's like, I just need to go and feel like crawling into a dark hole and playing really dark music just to sort of like re grow your energy, I guess,
yeah,
recharge. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
And in my videos, I play a lot of metal and stuff, and I'll get some DMs once in a while. They're like, "Dude, your videos are cool, but I cannot handle that music. Can you change it?" I'm like, "Nope,
No, no.
nope. I am a metal guy. These are my videos, and that's what I like." And then I got other people going like, "I don't like metal, but it fits your writing or whatever." Like, okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
so I'm really kind of curious and kind of want to start tickling on this now. So we're gonna fast forward to Misty out of I don't know, out of the Raven phase or maybe still in, but I'm really interested to know when those two-wheeled little things came into your life when you were starting to think about like motorcycles. Okay, let's do this.
That's what's really funny is I never thought about motorcycles. So like I said, when, I started a relationship at 16, I ended up moving over. I did a bunch of travel in between while still in a relationship, sort of. I ended up moving to Victoria, to be in that relationship. And so I had a very different experience at university because I was essentially common law with my boyfriend. And we had an apartment, and we lived like a married couple. And
Okay.
actually, I was engaged at a very young age and I had a plan. It was like, this was my high school sweetheart. we're going to get married, we're going to have kids, we're going to raise a family. I was taking child and youth care at UVic. I have always been interested in working with kids. I always wanted a family, and that was sort of the plan for my life. With travel, because I was very I was restless, and I guess that was the question between the two of us was, will your restlessness settle and can you stay put, or will you end up just not being able to maintain this sort of lifestyle that he was interested in? And out of the blue, he bought a motorcycle, completely out of the blue. It was like completely out of left field for him to even do anything like that. And it was no big deal, really. I just jumped on the back, and I was a passenger because that's what we did. And I, looked into getting my learners. I like fiddled around with it, but I wasn't super into it. And I just thought my place was kind of on the back. And then he got more and more involved in riding, and he started meeting bigger groups of riders, and they would go on these social rides, and it was a bit more social for him. But one day we rode in front of the Empress at Victoria Harbor there, and there was, I don't know, probably 20 motorcycles, everybody decked out in their leathers and matchy and everything. And we rode up, and I thought nothing of it, and I was sitting on the back and hopped off and chat. And again, I was like the only girl in all of the guys, and I loved it. I'm kind of used to being in that scenario. I was comfortable with it. And then out of the blue, this friggin' 1989 Honda CBR 600 zooms up, and everybody's heads turned, and there was a woman riding the bike. And she roars up, stops, and everybody's like, "Oh, Deanna! Oh my gosh, Deanna! Oh, she's so amazing!" And I see the ponytail, and she takes her helmet off. She's got the blonde hair. She's gorgeous, and everybody is just like swooning over her. And I just was sitting there going like, "What the heck am I doing on the back? I want to be her. I want that." And so I just went up to her right away, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Misty. Like, whoa, you're so cool. Like, I love your bike. How did you learn how to ride?" And her story was super cool. She'd sort of grown up with motorcycles around their family, and her brother was a big rider at the time, and she was super kind, and we just really hit it off. And she heard that I had my learner's license, so she let me try her motorcycle, and she inspired me to get my license right away. And then I ended up buying the exact same bike as hers, and then that was it. That was like, I got my own bike, and from the day I got my license, it was every day, all the time, riding, and we rode constantly, and we played riding games, and I had no idea what I was doing because nobody had taught me anything. I just jumped on a bike, got my license, and then was riding like a lunatic on the road with no idea what I was doing, but somehow I picked it up fairly quick and rode reasonably well, considering. So that was the foray.
That is actually really cool. Just like sitting down there and having another female just like, "Hey, what's up?" Because it is such a male-dominated sport, right? So, do you remember her name?
Oh yeah, it was Deanna. We're still we've kind of lost touch, but we're still Facebook friends, and I credit her big time. We went through a lot of things together. So it got very dark. We lost a lot of friends, and one of the people that we lost was her brother, Michael Battle. And that was a very, very profound loss to the community, and very shattering to a 20 something year old, new rider just getting into the sport, to suddenly see people dying. Um, it was, it was profound, but it also just goes to show you that at that stage in life, you don't really make the smartest choices. And even when people are dying around you, it doesn't always smarten you up. And
Yeah.
so I consider myself very lucky that I didn't, get injured more or worse, because the stakes are super high on the street, and we rode irresponsibly, and as you kind of do. So yeah, it was, her and I went through a really challenging period, and she's like dear to me, for all of those experiences that we went through.
I think that's I don't want to use the term rite of passage, but I don't know what else to call it. But I think, for a lot of people that get their motorcycle endorsement or start riding at a younger age without any experience prior to, I think that wild abandonment, the reckless, the videos we all see on whatever platform, Instagram or whatever, of the dudes on crotch rock, it's just 100 and whatever miles an hour down the freeway and waving in and out of cars, running from the cops. I never did the cop thing, but I definitely went way too fast on crotch rockets.
Yeah.
Way too fast.
Yeah, we did
Bump up
that,
against
and then we got into like the stunting too. Like there was, here's someone like me who doesn't shy away from being the center of attention, as my sister will happily tell you.
I
And
never heard her say that. Weird.
all of a sudden, I'm you have to remember this was 23 years ago that I started riding. It wasn't like super common for women to be riding. There was me and Deanna, and then there was like a handful here and there, but we would always be in giant groups of men. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, they're doing wheelies, and I'm like, I want to learn how to do a wheelie. And then they're doing stoppies, and I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to do that. And then we just kept pushing it and pushing it. And I started doing these, like I was standing up on the bike. That was like my signature move. So I'd throw it into neutral and jump up on the bike and surf down and cruise down the street. And then we would just push the limits. And I started doing that down like Main Street, Victoria, past all the bars at, lineup time when everybody's lined up for the bars. And I'm all, look at me, doing like
Oh yeah.
squiddly stuff down the street. Right. So it perpetuates itself because you get noticed. And
Mhm.
then when I was like decent at it, then I got noticed more. And, it sort of, I look back now and I think it's a bit comical, but I also am a little embarrassed by my
It's
squiddly,
me.
showy attitude. Like, yeah, that was me
Oh
flashing
my gosh.
orange bra underneath my shirt while I was standing on the bike because that got attention, right? I look at things a little differently now. I don't seek it as intently as I did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think we all kind of grow out of that crazy phase a little bit. I never flashed my orange bra, but I did do a lot of stupid things like that. I always try to keep that underneath, but
Yeah.
I yeah. I think one of the things though about you talking about being one of the only women is, my writing background has come from a lot of male dominated writing, right? So you have like the Harley crowd or even way back as a kid, just riding dirt bikes and stuff. That was all dudes, right? I remember my sister rode, but she didn't really ride. She had a motorcycle and she'd come out and she'd putt along a little bit, but she never really rode. And so I think once I got into the ADV community, and I know your journey is a lot different than mine, and your writing's just all over the place. But for me, getting in, and then all of a sudden, like down here, when I first started getting on Instagram, Tiffany, the feminine tomboy on the Instagrams. I was like, oh, girl writer. And then all of a sudden, Grace, oh, girl writer. It's pretty rad. And then all of a sudden I come up with the mixed nuts and it's like half. And this is freaking awesome. Just getting into something like that where it's just more 50-50, and I think it's awesome. So,
It's come a
you
long way,
know,
for sure, because it wasn't like that. And it's interesting to see the change and the difference, because it certainly wasn't like that 23 years ago. It was much more noticeable. I had short hair at the time, and a friend of mine was worried that people were going to mistake me as a boy on the bike. And she was proud. She wanted everyone to know. So she bought me this fake ponytail. So it was this long blonde braid, and I just kept it clipped to my helmet. So I would put my helmet on and there would be this long braid. And it was like this hysterical sort of way of saying, make sure you know that she's a woman, because, you wouldn't tell with the hair otherwise.
right. Well, moving on to kind of that point I was making, I think somebody like you, Tiffany and Grace, like I put you three kind of in the same pedestal, if you will, right? And I have a granddaughter who's 3 right now, and I'm motorcycle papa. That's what she's starting to call me, right? Motorcycle papa. And I want to start introducing her more to the motorcycles. And I think it's very inspiring that I have you guys in this little, like, look, these are girls too, and look what they're doing. You know, look how powerful they are as women, and look how freaking like role models they are. And you're kind of one of those people I want her to look up to. I don't want her like Beyonce or whatever, whatever. I want real people, that she can really look up to. Well, I guess right now it's all Disney princesses. That's her thing. But when she gets out of that, I just really I admire, like, especially your attitude and your writing and just all your accomplishments. It's like, Everly, I want you to see Misty.
Aw.
That's what I want for her to see more positive role models. And even the music stuff is even good because she's a total metalhead right now, which is
That's
awesome.
Well, I think what you'll find nowadays, though, is that they don't need to be presented with female role models, because there's so many more nowadays. So what I've noticed is, I was one of the first, not the first, but it was very few women were riding when I started. But now there's women riders everywhere, and it translates to more little girls at the track and more little girls starting. So this was super cool. When my kids were really young, I was driving in the car, driving up this hill, and I always, if I see a motorcycle rider go by, I comment. I can't help it, on whatever coaching they need or how poorly they're riding. I can't help it. I'm just like, every rider I see, I like, oh, duck feet. Oh, he's stiff arms. Oh, he doesn't know how to steer. Oh, what a bad throttle control, whatever. Not realizing that there's two little human beings that are sponging everything that you're saying. So the coolest thing ever happened when Ashton was about 4 or 5 years old, and this rider went flying by us. And it was clearly a man in my perspective. This motorcycle rider went flying by and tried to make this corner. I didn't even say anything. And Ashton says, "Hey, Mom, look at that motorcycle rider. Does she need coaching?" And I was like, unbelievable. He assumed that rider was a female first, because he's used to his mom and my friends or the circle riding and he's used to women being in these roles, right? He said the same thing about a pilot. I said, "Oh, I met the pilot on my most recent flight." And he said, "Oh, was she nice?" And I was like, "Oh," like, I still think that pilots and motorcycle riders are men. Like, I still do,
Yeah.
because growing up, they always were. And so to hear the shift in the way kids view things nowadays, it's not weird. It's not weird for them. So when we go to the track and I see 10 kids riding and 4 of them are girls, I want to say, oh, 4 girls, like, 40% of the kids here are girls. But they don't think it's weird. They never even bat an eye that there's girls at the track. And so I have to be careful to not make too big of a deal out of it because it's normalized now. And it's such a shift from the way it was before because I got noticed. Oh, how did you get here? Why are you here? That's your bike? You race? And now they don't see it as different. It's so cool.
No, that is super awesome. Super rad. I like that you're starting to see more and more little girls. And as you're saying that, I'm like, it's about time to get Everly out there for sure.
Well, I'm very good at teaching kids to ride.
Well, there we go. Just need to come down here more. So when did you want to take your riding kind of the next level? Did you like realize I've had a couple motorcycle instructors on, so I'm kind of wondering at some point did you oh I need some more schooling, or did you go I'm gonna start racing?
So it was very accidental. So two main things happened. One, when you start riding in groups and you're sport bike riding, we would go on very spirited rides. And there was always the hierarchy of who would lead the rides and who would be at the tail end and where you fell in the order based on speed, ability, etc. Right? There was just this unspoken rule of you start at the back and then you kind of work your way up. And so I had been working my way up and getting faster and faster, just on street rides, no coaching, no nothing, still no idea really what I was doing, but just riding a lot and just being naturally good at picking it up, I guess. And so I slowly started moving to the front of the group. And I will never forget the ride where we pulled over at a stop or a rest stop. We took a little rest. And then they sort of we said, we want to make an announcement. We would like Misty to lead the rest of the ride. Congratulations.
Oh, no kidding.
You have earned this. And I was like, I'm gonna lead this ride. And so I took off like a banshee, I'm gonna prove to them how fast I am. And I was scraping my foot peg, which I look back now is the most atrocious thing you could possibly do while riding a 1989 CBR 600 as fast as it could possibly go, scraping foot pegs as we went along. But I was very cool in that group because they could see the sparks flying behind me. So not only did I progress to leading the ride, but I showed off by sparking them all behind and leading a really good a ride. In my mind, it was a race. So that was sort of the first step to knowing I can ride. I can keep up with the fast guys in the group. I can push myself. I can handle the bike. I was a decent rider. But I still had no idea that there was motorcycle racing going on or that people did that. And a good friend of mine, Scott Collins of Adventure Motorcycle Co-op, who I
was about to ask about him. Yeah.
Who I have known for 23 years and was one of these riders who was typically leading the group rides and so knows my progression from newbie squid rider. Out of the blue one day he said, hey, I'm gonna ride down to Seattle to watch our friend Oliver Jervis race in Seattle. Do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know, motorcycle racing, I don't know anything about it, who cares, whatever, not really interested. And he's like, well, what if you could take your bike out at lunch and try your bike on track? I had just progressed from my old bike to a 2000 Kawasaki 600RR ZX6. And it was new. I bought it brand new. It was the only yellow and black one on the whole island. It was my pride and joy. And I was yes, if I can take this on a racetrack, yes, let's go. So total last minute, we took the ferry, we rode down to Seattle, some fun little, back roads, etc. And we arrived at Seattle International Raceway on, I believe it was like a Saturday morning race weekend start. And we went into the gates, and it was unlike anything I had seen in my entire life. There were just rows and rows and rows with pits and tents and motorcycles everywhere, and engines were revving, and the smell of race gas and exhaust and fumes, and everything was busy, and people were zooming by on pit bikes and mini dirt bikes and scooters and bicycles and zip, zip, zip. And there were helmets and leathers and people limping by and people figuring out where they had to go, and the sound of bikes in the background. And it was just like, I was like, where are we? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And we went and we were meeting people, and, we went and saw Ollie, who was set up in his pits, and like, just the setup was cool. He had matching bikes, and he had a mechanic, and just seeing everything was just mind blowing. And so we went to watch the bikes going by, and they're like going by so fast, and it's super exciting. And then at lunch hour, they were like, okay, it's time for Taste of Racing. And so anyone who wanted to could go single file behind a guy with a penny, really slow. But we went and did 2 laps of the racetrack. And I swear, the second I rode out onto the track and went to do the first corner, in my head, I was like, I'm going to be a motorcycle racer. I can do this. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to do this. And by the end of the 2 laps, I had convinced myself that I was going to be a motorcycle racer. And I came in, and my friends, Scott included, took one look at my face, and I was like, where do I sign up? I'm signing up. How do I sign up for the race school? How do I do this? I'm going to race. And that was it. It went a million miles an hour after that. I came in, I signed up for the race school. I think it was a couple weekends later, I went and took the race school. And then I just dropped everything. It just went, my life was going this way, and it went whoosh, at a million miles an hour that way.
Oh my gosh. So you said 2 weeks later you're in race school?
I believe the timing was about that. It was very, very quick. So I signed up immediately to do this. And then I got my novice race license, and then I went to do my first race. And then it just progressed. And I'm not kidding. I got my race license, I think, on July 3rd, 2001. And I'm pretty sure on July 3rd, 2002, I won my first race.
Oh, wow.
It was like,
got after it.
Super, like, yeah, it all happened very, very fast. And this was, and to add a little bit of element of emotion, I guess. In 1999, my dad was working as the PR and media coordinator and manager for Greg Moore, who was an Indy Lights racer at the time. Yeah.
I've got a story about him.
Mm-hmm. So my dad had worked with Greg for several years and had just signed on as like his official manager for PR and sponsorship, et cetera, and was actually at the race with Greg when he was killed.
Yeah.
And so it was October 31st, 1999. And I remember the day, and I remember going to the funeral, and I remember it was the first time, and I think the only time, I've seen my dad cry. And so that was in October of 1999. In very early 2000, April something, is when I got a motorcycle. And my dad was like beside himself. Like, I don't want to know about you riding. I don't want anything to do with it. And so then when I called him and told him I was going to race motorcycles, again, he was like, no, too much, too close, can't handle it. And he said very specifically, don't ask me for money, don't ask me for help. I don't want to know about the races. You can let me know after that you're safe. I don't want to worry about it. And he was just like, it was so emotional and raw for him that that's where he was at. So for this whole first year when I was racing, I never told my parents when I was racing, where I was going. We didn't have the same social media at the time, so it wasn't posted everywhere where I was, etc.
Yeah.
And so I never told them anything. And I had multiple crashes in those early years because I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm.
And the day I won my first race, I called my dad. He was the first person I called, and I said, Dad, I won. And he goes, what? I said, I won my race. I won. And he was like, what? We need sponsorship. You need a package. We need to reach out. You need a website. And
Oh
all
my gosh.
he like switched into marketing manager guy and started mentoring me on how to make motorcycle racing a business. So he was the one that was like, start a business account, get a website, start looking for sponsors, start writing race reports, start thanking your sponsors. And he really worked to teach me from a distance because it was still hard for him emotionally, but from a distance on how to do the business and handle the business side of things. And so, yeah, so he's been like a background support system basically since that day. So
It's
just
actually cool.
to know that it wasn't as simple as they make it sound. Like there was a lot of emotion involved, right? We had lost
Yeah.
Deanna's brother in the midst there. There were other people that we lost along the way. The timeline is spotty, but there was a lot of emotional stuff that went along with going and fulfilling and following this race path. Just to make that really clear, is like there's a lot of reality that goes along with it.
I think it's great that you're actually bringing a lot of this up because I think a lot of the storylines of people who are successful are like, I started here and look at me now, right? So you miss the dot essentially in between those dates, you know. So saying a lot of the hardships and stuff, like you talking about the crashes, and then even with your dad with Greg, which a funny side note, real quick, is so when Casey and I were really young, I don't know, maybe we were just married or whatever. We were huge into the Indy cars and the Indy lights. Go to the race every year. We knew drivers, we knew sponsors like Greg Moore players. We got all that right, and like we would literally just know everybody. And so for whatever reason, I don't remember what part, but we went to a race here in Portland, and we were walking through the Indy light pits, and there was nobody around. It was just us essentially, and it was a hot day, and she wasn't dressed very much, and we're actually car 99, you know, and we're like, oh wow, you know, because we were into the players team, right? So I remember them up in the Indy cars and then watching, and I remember the color schemes were just backwards. I think if I remember correctly, I might have this backwards. The Indy cars were predominantly blue with the white, and then the Indy lights were white with the blue.
Hmm.
It's kind of a little bit of a difference. So we were just walking by the players' cars, and we were there by Greg's, and we're just it was just us. There was no crew, nobody out, just a trailer. He walked out of the trailer and came over and talked to us for a while, and it was just okay. He was talking to Casey, not me. He was over there chit chatting with her, but I just remember like, "Wow, this dude is really freaking cool, like really cool." And then I'm kind of wondering if it was your dad because somebody else came out and was like, time to go inside or whatever, you know? I was like, "Okay, it was nice meeting you." I just remember that's always been one of the highlights. And then once we found out that he died at the race, we were both like, "Oh, what?"
Yeah.
So the fact that there's a little bit of a loose connection there is kind of neat. But
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit. Okay, so
Mhm.
you went on the track, you did your 2 laps, and you were just hook, line, and sinker. I mean, you were done. This is it. And then a couple weeks later, you go to race school. What was that first moment of race school? Because in my mind, knowing me,
Yeah.
anytime I'm doing something like that, I can't sleep the night before. I'm just
Mhm.
like, I want to go, I want to go, and I want to go. So it's like super excitement. And then once you get there, you're like super nervous. Right. So what was like your day one of race school like being there? And where
I
was
think
it?
the thing with motorcycle racing is that it's cumbersome. So there's a lot of equipment required, there's a lot of prep required, there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of stuff to do. So race school wasn't at Seattle Raceway, it was at, I can't even remember exactly where it was, outside of Seattle somewhere. It was at an old airport parking facility that they made, sort of this track. And we had no idea what we were doing. So I went with two friends of mine from the island. I'm not a mechanic. I have no idea how to work on bikes. I had even less experience back then. And we were like, what do we need? I don't know. Throw the bikes in the back of this ghetto trailer that we had and throw some water and a snack and show up. Right. So I just was seeing, I should dig out the pictures. The pictures are unbelievable. This trailer, I don't even know how it survived the drive down. Our bikes, we had nothing was prepped correctly. So while we were at the track, we're like, oh, you have to tape the lights, you have to take off the mirrors, you have to do all this stuff. We had no idea. So we're like slammed trying to figure out how to do that. We were duct taping our lights and drawing with Sharpie our number plates on the bike. And people were essentially laughing at us because we had no idea what we were doing. Nor did we bring a tent or shade or chairs or any of the things that you need. And so there's a funny picture of us, like we had a mat and we were holding it over our heads like, we're in the hot sun, there's no shade, how do we do this?
No.
So the very first moments were complete overwhelm, like, what are we doing here? And we are so unprepared, we don't know what we're doing, but also with extreme excitement because we didn't really care. We just wanted to learn how to do what we needed to do so we could go and race. And so there was a lot of learning. You have to learn, all of the flags and the etiquette and how to enter and exit a track. And they didn't really teach a ton, but I do remember that was the first time I got my knee down, and it was the most exciting feeling. And I beat my friends in getting the knee down, and I was so stoked because it was all a competition.
Of
And
course.
um, we had a great old time. And then we were taking that experience and trying to improve on it at each of the races we went to. So each race was, what did we forget this time? What can we add to our list for next time? What do we need to buy? What do we need to source? What do we need to
Mm.
bring? There's so much involved with motorcycle racing that it's, 90% of the battle is all the prep and organizing stuff. And the rest of it is the actual riding portion. And I just happened to be accidentally good at that part. It wasn't until the next phase of my life, which we can go into, that I started to really get good at actually motorcycle racing and fueling the career from there.
Sounds like a perfect segue. So, what was the next part of your writing career?
um, so with my dad's, encouragement and
Mhm.
assistance with growing the business side of things, I started to, like create a website and create an email list and look for sponsors. And so, I was I can start name dropping some places, but like Action Motorcycles in Victoria was one of the first sponsors that I had, and I was dating one of the mechanics there, and so he was super helpful in prepping my bike and teaching me showing me what needed to be done, but also doing it for me because I had no idea what I was doing. And Action was the first place to sponsor me, so I had discounts on parts, and they would occasionally give me things. And I remember, when I got like a case of Bardol oil, like how amazing that was. Like, I got sponsored, I have oil. And so I started collecting more and more sponsors, very small in the beginning, but these were people that didn't have to believe in me, and yet they did believe in me, and they gave what they could give. And I will never, like, I'm so indebted to them for that belief in me initially, that I hope to one day be able to give back to more people by sponsoring them in some ways. But the biggest breakthrough in my riding came when a sponsor on the island, a friend of my boyfriend at the time, Mark, a company called CLS West, and they approached me with a different kind of sponsorship option. And they said, "Have you ever heard of the California Superbike School? Keith Code, Twist of the Wrist." And I was like, "No, no idea." And they said, "Okay, well, it's the school in the States, and Keith is renowned as one of the best motorcycle coaches in the world. Him and his wife, Cindy, his name was Phil, and Cindy had gone to the school multiple times, and they felt like the best gift that they could give me to further my racing was not money for races or whatever. It was to send me to the Superbike school." And for me, at that point in my life, that sponsorship, like, it literally changed the course of my life and has meant more than anything anyone has done, because it set me on this new path. And basically, they sent me to all 4 levels of the Superbike school, which would have been completely financially out of my realm. And they covered everything. So we flew down together in the spring of 2003. So I'd been racing for a year and a half, I guess, crashing a lot, winning some. And we went to Laguna Seca, and I got to do the California Superbike School on a Kawasaki ZX6 school bike, and it changed my life. I went down there with an attitude of thinking I was hot shit, and that I was going to show them how good I was, and that, yeah, for sure I could get some coaching, but weren't they going to be impressed and surprised at how fast a girl was, and blah, 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 blah. And I went down there and got my ass kicked, like really kicked. And there was a female coach, and she kicked my ass. And
A little humbling.
it was the most humbling experience I think I've ever had, going, all of the coaches, every single one of them, could kick my ass easily and give hand signals while they were doing it. So number 1, I was humbled. Number 2, I really, really spent a lot of time learning the skills that they were teaching us. And I was determined to get better. And I realized I had a lot of bad habits that came from how much riding I had done in a very small period of time. And they were really hard to break. And the methodology at the Superbike school is very much to put the rider at cause of their own riding. So they don't word things as, "You're not doing this, you're not doing that, do this, do that." They word it as, "In this particular corner, does the bike feel as stable as it did in that particular corner?" And you're like, "Oh, no, it doesn't actually. It feels like crap." And then they're like, "Okay, well, what are you doing with the throttle? What is good throttle control? Where should you be getting on the gas? How does that affect the stability in the corner? How is that going to change your line in the corner? And all these things, I was like, I have no idea. Like, throttle on, you go faster. Throttle off, you slow down. Like, no idea. And so just the simple act of doing 2 days of Superbike school at Laguna Seca, back to back, and then going back to my races, instant improvement, like seconds. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're not just getting a little bit better, you're getting a lot better. And we're only just scratching the surface here. And at the same time as I was taking this school as a student, now I was on their email list, and they sent out an email saying, we're always looking for motorcycle coaches. If you think you've got what it takes. So this was part of why I went down with such an attitude, because I was like, oh yeah, I got what it takes. They're going to be so impressed with me. I'm going to be the best coach ever.
Right.
And then I was like, holy crap. There's a lot involved in being a coach. And so I started the process during those first 2 days that I was there as a student of trying out to be a coach. So there was a multitude of steps. Step 1 was a phone interview, which I passed. Step 2 was in-person interview. How would you fit in? How's your personality? Can you communicate? Blah, 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 blah. Yes. Then there was the riding. And they assessed my riding on those first 2 days. And they said, not quite there yet. Need some work. We think you'll need another 6 months to a year of racing experience, etc. And I'm very, very stubborn. And I said, I'm coming back in 4 months and I am going to pass the test then. I will be better. I'm going to do it. And they were like, well, many of our coaches have had to come back multiple times and, need a lot of experience. So we'll see how it goes. And so I just worked my ass off. I studied the manual stuff. I read up on all of the tech, and I went down a couple months later down to Streets of Willow to take level 3 and 4 of the school. And on the final day, I did the riding checkout, and they were like, yep, you've passed. We think we can start your training. And I was over the moon with that suggestion. And there was a bunch of other things I want to touch on that occurred in there as well, in terms of that was my dream job, right? So when I went down and I knew I was applying for this, it was like, that was all I could think about. Could you imagine coaching motorcycle riding and being paid to do that? That was like the only thing I wanted. But I was also broke. I had moved back to my parents' house by this time. I left the island. I was living in my parents' basement. No money, no long-term solution for how I was going to make money. And my dad was really pushing me to get into business. He's like, you're an entrepreneur and you're going to be good at business and blah, 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 blah. And I applied for this regular job, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, as this marketing coordinator for this company, and felt like I bullshitted my way through the entire interview and somehow got offered the position. This was like days before I heard officially that I could coach with the school. And I really struggled. And my dad was stoked. He's like, you're going to take it, right? You're going to take the job. It was stable, predictable, responsible. And I swirled. I struggled. And I was like, I think that I will want to jump into a river if I work 9 to 5, if I do this. And so against everybody's suggestions, I turned the position down. And literally the next day, when I'd been in California with the school, they said your riding had now been good enough. They didn't say you have a job. They said, we think your riding is good enough. We'll get back to you. Then I went home, then I got offered this other job. I turned it down, not knowing what was going to happen, but believing very deeply that I was not meant for a 9-to-5 job and that I wanted something more. And I feel very much like it was that was part of how the universe said, you know what? You risked responsible, stable, predictable, safe financial security. So you are rewarded with the fact that we're offering you this job, which was unconventional, but way more exciting and way better. So that message is what I want to tell a lot of people, is just because you get offered something that is safe and predictable and it sounds really good, go inside, go figure out, is that what your heart wants? Is that what will grow you as a human being? Is that what you're passionate about? Is that what's going to light up your world and create a difference for the people that you interact with? Because I knew that other job wasn't. And the second I became a coach with the Superbike School, it was like, that is my purpose. I finally found it. So that there was the racing on one side, but even more valuable from that is the absolute joy that I get from being a coach. And it's really indescribable to most people, but it's something that I really value and want to teach everybody out there, that you can do whatever you choose and whatever fills your heart, right? And it gives you so much joy to push beyond what is comfortable to get to that spot. And I see it more and more with the way society is going now, that they're like, we don't want to waste our lives with jobs that don't give us anything. People are looking for more fulfillment, but it often comes with some sacrifice, but it's totally worth it. And rent.
No, I think that is some of the best thing that you can possibly say. And this is coming from a guy that's has his own business too. So it's that whole just jump off the ledge and go, let the brakes off, just go with it. And it really seems like it worked really well for you,
Yeah.
getting the job down there. So once you got offered, the job, I assume there's a little bit of travel involved.
Yes, a lot of travel. Now, like the timing was interesting because I did a bunch of training, because the training process is extremely arduous. Not a lot of people actually complete the whole training process with the school. And, they say it's something like 1% of applicants actually get through and become certified coaches. So I spent a lot of time initially really working on the training. I didn't want to just stay at intro coach like level. I wanted to just get me trained as much as possible as I can. And, so there was a lot of coaching, travel, racing, trying to fit it all in, was really interesting, but also very, very enjoyable and fun. And I got to see a lot of places and ride a ton, and all of that riding helped with my racing and made me a better overall rider.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I remember, I can't remember what conversation this was. It was what time we were hanging out, but you were talking about how the lingo is pretty much the same no matter where you go. So you have all the coaching and all the principles are the same, and you go wherever. And I want to say you went
at the Superbike School. So just to clarify, the lingo between coaches at the Superbike School, and this is a testament to the way they run their coaching and training, in that if you get me as a coach in, at Laguna Seca, and And then you go 2 months later to the California Superbike School in Australia, and you ride Phillip Island, and you get a totally different coach over there. You are going to get the same terminology, the same questioning format, the same, the same types of observations, the same message through and through, delivered in very different manners, because I'm a completely different personality of coach than someone else. But the value in that is that the tech is the same. So we all go through vigorous training. Like, my manual is not kidding, this big. And that's the third one that I've had, right? And, so there's constant learning, there's constant improvement, and there's constant testing on where we're at, right? We have to record what we say to our students sometimes, so that they can listen and make sure that we're delivering it in the way that we're meant to deliver it. And it's all quality control. And so that's the way that they get it the same, no matter where you go. Yeah. Just to clarify.
No, that's actually what I wanted to say, but you just, obviously you said it more rad than me. I want to say you went, and I don't know, we've had a lot of chitty chats, but I want to say you went to Australia and you went to go coach somebody. And I remember you saying something, you went on a lap with somebody and he was just like, "Oh my God, you're so fast," or whatever. "How many times have you ridden this track?" And you're like, "It's my first lap. It's my first time." It was like, I listened to that. I was like, legit.
Yeah.
This is a legit lady right here. So
yeah,
I don't remember.
Fun.
Was that down in Australia?
That's happened multiple times, because a lot of the tracks we go to, we've never ridden before, right? So we show up at a new racetrack, whether it's Pittsburgh or Australia or Spain or like wherever we go. A lot of times it will be the first time that we have seen that racetrack. And so they try to let us go out in a rental car ahead of time beforehand, but it doesn't always work. And I have actually led orientation laps on a track that I have never, ever seen before. And as I'm going up over the corner, I'm like, does it go left? Does it go right? I don't know. Which way? And you're like, this way. But
oh my gosh,
part of our training, part of what makes us good coaches is that we have to learn tracks fast. And so we have methods to pick up cues to learn tracks super fast. And so just because we have to. And so there's been more than one occasion where, and it's so fun to do, where the student will say, like, "I race here. Where do you think is a good place to pass?" or whatever. I'm like, I don't even know what corner that is. Like, I just got here. And they're like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, this is my first time." "Oh," and they're like, "You mean to say you've only done 2 sessions on this track?" And I'm all, "Yep." "Follow me."
Let's go.
So it gives you a lot of cred. It was really hard initially. So one of the biggest learning that I struggled with was, here I was 24, 25, 26 years old or whatever it was. And, female, and I'm working with male students, and most of them are great. But every once in a while you would get this attitude-y jerk who you could tell instantly that they were just not stoked about getting the girl. I could almost read it behind their helmet, like, "Great, I got the girl. I bet she's not going to be able to keep up to me." And they're just presenting this jerk attitude. And I really struggled with it at first because, I looked a bit younger than I was. And, like, here's some 40-something-year-old man getting coached by a young-looking female. Didn't always go over very well. And I didn't know how to manage it. And I would get a little bit intimidated until finally my chief instructor said, "Well, are you faster than him?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but it's a little tricky, but I am faster than him." And so he said, "Go out and smoke him. Like, smoke him. Just go as fast as you can. Don't worry about him behind you, nothing, and make it look easy. Act bored. Put your hand on your shoulder." Just make it look easy. And I was like, "Oh my that is going to piss him off. He's going to be so mad at me. I don't know. And I was so nervous to do it. And holy crap, did that guy change his tune. I flew past him. I gave him a hand signal in the air. I went over the top of the crest. I was terrified because I was going really fast. And I was like, ah! And then at the top of the crest, I was all, whatevs. And then I kept going. And in the conversation afterwards, he like right changed. And then I started just giving him this real matter-of-fact attitude. And I was like, okay, let's talk about throttle control. And he's like, well, I'm really good at throttle control. And I was like, oh yeah, well, did you notice that I left you in the dust on the exit of that corner? Did you notice that I was really pulling away from you? And he's, well, I guess, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what does that say about your throttle control? What can be improved? What am I doing with the throttle that's different than what you're doing with the throttle? And it just really changed the tune. And so now, instead of being intimidated by it, I'm all, this guy thinks I can't.
Like, oh boy, we get another one.
And I'm all, game on, let's go.
That is freaking hilarious.
So fun.
So through all of your coaching, and it sounds like you have, an endless amount of stories from coaching and racing and stuff. Was there an actual just swinging back? The only real comparison I have to anything that you've done like this is just when I was coaching football. And I remember we had this kid, Cam Summers, come on, and he transferred out of a really good school, and his dad was one of our coaches, and he was one of my position group players. And very, very quickly, I was like, I got to up my game, because this kid is destined for the next level. This kid, which he did, really challenged me as a coach. And he would ask me questions at practice where I'd be like, okay, so he just asked this, okay, and the safety drops over here, and we got the cornerback. Oh yeah, that is correct. Do you have any of those kind of moments too, where somebody came on and they were just like, okay, game on, I got to step it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was coaching, most of the students were adults, and I was loving it, but there was definitely that piece of, I have a degree in child and youth care. I really wanted to coach kids. Like, I really wish there was some kids involved here. And then I got a call from Keith Code saying, we've got this phenom kid. He's located just outside of Portland. Will you coach him? He's 8 years old. And I was like, 100%. I was over the moon. Like, this is the universe giving back to me. It heard my call. It is giving back to me. And so I drove down to a go-kart track in the States, McMinnville, and met this kid. And his name was Peter Lenz, and fell in love with him instantly, and marveled at how good he was. So I didn't know that kids started that young. I didn't know that kids could ride that well. It was a whole learning process to see this phenomenal child who was better than most of us adults, but also needed a lot of coaching. And so it was very fun and very challenging right off the bat to work with him, because I had to adapt things to how would a child, work with this information. Most of the time he was just as capable, if not more, than many adult students at understanding the tech. But then there was also a lot of moments where it was like, he's 8. Like, that's just a kid. He needs his stuffy. He needs a break. He needs a snack. Like,
right.
He needs to run around for a bit. Like, he needs to be reminded that this is play. This is like fun, and so that challenged me big time as a coach in general, because he was so good. And the older he got and the faster he got, the less we could ride with him on track. And so it's a question we get asked a lot, like, well, you're not, Misty, you're not the fastest coach out there. You're not the fastest racer out there. How can you coach? And it's like, well, most coaches out there aren't as good as the athletes that they coach. Otherwise they would be the competitors. And so it's like the ultimate showcase of how good your coaching is by how well you can foster someone else's talent. And then you just get creative with ways of working with it. I stood trackside. I rode for 2 corners at a time with him. I led him on one corner specifically, or we did a lot of video footage to bridge that gap. But with Peter came just this new potential of working with kids and seeing how far we could potentially get him. Now, with the story of Peter also comes the biggest tragedy in my life, which extends into every single thing I do, every day, every decision. Because Peter was tragically killed at age 13 in a motorcycle race at Indianapolis. And it was, and still remains, the worst day of my life and the most dear person to me to have lost. And the fact that we lost him doing what I love to do, motorcycle racing, at such an age brought up a tremendous amount of emotional trauma, but also guilt, regret, doubt, I don't know, grief, like all of we really started to question everything. And with Peter's death came a lot of backlash from the non-riding community. So they ended up, Fox News, I think, ended up doing a thing on how children at that age shouldn't be allowed to race motorcycles because they're not capable of making those types of decisions. They don't understand the risk. The parents should be arrested for child endangerment, child abuse, etc. And it made me raging mad, because here you have a family who put their heart and soul into making this child's dreams come true and encouraging him, supporting him, teaching him, being with him. He participated in all sorts of other sports. He was a great student. The bond between him and his parents was really close. And he came from a wonderful family where his parents went over and above. And you compare that to, especially in the States, you've got this epidemic of obesity. You've got, children, young children that are overweight, dealing with diabetes and health issues that they never should be struggling with at that age. And here you're telling me that this athletic, adventurous, incredible, smart kid that spends every weekend with his dad, that works on motorcycles, that spends all this wonderful family time and is a great kid, is somehow being pushed into it, or that his parents are neglecting him just because of a tragic outcome, made me so angry. Like, where are the parents? Parents should be arrested for having fat kids. Like, I'm sorry, but your responsibility as a parent is to make healthy choices. And maybe this is going to explode into some backlash, I don't know, but it pissed me off royally because
It should have.
it was so unfair, and my name got thrown around a lot because I was his coach. And what are people doing supporting this kind of environment? And at the same time, his friend, who was his age, who we also coached a little bit as well, Joe Roberts, has gone on and is now racing on the world stage. He's racing in Moto2. I think I'm terrible with the race series, but he's gone on to the world stage and he's a phenomenal, talented rider, right? And Peter could have and should have been there. And, it just brings up that sort of question about life. Like, it could happen anytime. Kids drown in
Right.
pools. Kids die by being hit by baseballs. They crash cars at 16. They do this. Like, it sucks. Kids die, right? And as a parent, it is on the top of your list constantly. And so for me to have gone through this with Peter, it really pushed me to the edge of my comfort zone in terms of what will I allow for my kids, right? And a lot of people are astounded that I will let my kids ride and race in the same sort of scenario as Peter. It's not an easy decision that I make. It's not one that lands lightly on me. It's something I question daily. It's something I try to always have. Actually, I don't try to, it's just always there. And I really try to use it as a day-to-day guide in terms of how do I make this decision based on the factors right now. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it is constantly in my head. Yeah.
I think those who shout the loudest and accuse the most are the most uneducated about whatever they're talking about. How many times have we heard from loved ones or friends talking about us having this passion for motorcycles and we ride on the roads and whatever, and you're going to die on that thing. And it's just like, well, okay. But I mean, I walk outside the house every single day too. I drive in a car, drive in a truck. I do this, I do that. I mean, it can happen anytime, any place. And the fact that it happened on a track is tragic and it's, you know, a devastating loss. But at the same point, Fox News should just quiet. Whoever is saying it's ridiculous. And you hit it on the point because okay, so a parent should be arrested for allowing their kid to spend time, right? But I mean, then with that theory, my dad should be arrested too because I mean, I was climbing mountains with him, being in very high exposure areas, at young ages and stuff. And I remember, one time in particularly, we were climbing up Mount Hood, and there was this guy. So top of Mount Hood, you have the Hogs Back that goes up, and it goes into two chutes, and then the summit's right there. And I remember we were climbing up, and this guy was coming down, kind of on his back, reverse crab crawl, coming down with no ropes or anything. And he was by himself and clearly very inexperienced. And my dad was like, I'm going to belay this guy down to the bottom of the Hog's Back, and everything's fine once you get down there, but it's like this last several hundred feet. So he takes the rope and I unclip. He's like, oh, I'll see you at the top. Okay. So, I was like 16 maybe and went up to the top. And I remember these people were up there like looking at me like,
What?
what are you doing up here? You're awfully young, but it's the same thing. If you have the theory of don't let them race, then that's wrong too.
Yeah.
And I let my kids play football and I let my kids drive and I let this. So, I mean, it's a ridiculous comparison and theory for people to even bring that kind of stuff up. But again,
they don't give
it's
kids enough
ratings.
credit, right? Like I
No,
wrote a
right.
letter to the Portland, race sanctioning body when Peter was trying to be allowed to race at 13 because they didn't think he was, mature enough to make those decisions. And I said, from my coaching and racing experience, this kid makes better decisions than most of the 20-something-year-old men that I race against. Right. And he really did. He made very capable decisions and was a phenomenal rider. And it just happened to be a bad accident. right? It was just a terrible circumstance that got him, right? And you just never know. But I tend to look at the value that the racing brings. Yeah, sure, it's dangerous, but also the kids are wearing all the gear. The ambulance is on site. It's rare that tragedies like this unfold, but now you've got a kid, like mine, for example. He's 14 years old. He's had 10 years of riding experience in controlling all manner of motorcycles, right? He's most recently ridden a YZ 125 motocross bike, and he kicks my ass, and he's just about ready to kick my husband's ass on the track. He's ridden bigger bikes. He rode a Ninja 250 is the biggest sport bike he's ridden. Now you take this kid at 14, and in 2 more years, he's going to have 2 more years of experience operating a machine, being situationally aware, making smart choices, riding on different circumstances, understanding traction, understanding control, understanding speed, and you're going to put him into a car, right, with next to kids at 16 who have never driven a motor vehicle in their life, right? Which kid is going to make better choices, right?
Absolutely.
He's got a place where he can go as fast as he wants that's as safe. So he knows that when he's 16 and he's in a car, you get a speeding ticket, or I find out that you're, driving your friends, recklessly, that's it. You're done, right? But I trust that he'll make better decisions because he understands how machines work. He gets the consequences, right? He's been in charge.
Yeah, 100%. My dad did a good job of that. I think I was rolling around like gravel roads and stuff at like 7, it's pretty rad. So a bit of a depressing part there, but I also know you've done more racing than just on the track like that. So you've done some flat track and motocross, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Not racing per se, but I do ride everything. So my racing career, I did like a couple years of club racing, Seattle, Spokane, Portland, where I was sleeping in my minivan and scraping together money and eating Mr. Noodles and doing that sort of thing. Then I was doing a stint, with my training and getting some coaching. And then I hadn't ridden, like I raced an SV 650 for years and hadn't raced like a 600 or anything bigger than the SV 650. And I heard about this one-off race, or I heard about a race series in Ontario called the Pro Honda Oils Women's Cup Challenge. And it was a women's only series. And up until that point, I'd only ever raced against the men. And so I was really sort of anti-women only stuff. I was like, what's their problem? They're not brave enough to race with the guys. Why do they need their own class? Boo hiss. Like, I thought it was going to be this dumb powder puff class. And so I was curious about it enough that I reached out to someone in Ontario thinking that it would be a great opportunity as a journalist, because I had just dabbled in writing in some motorcycle magazines, to cover the story as like, yeah, I write for a couple, to cover the story as Misty goes to try this ladies only class, right? So I hooked up with this incredible guy, George Budaki. He had a company called Turn 2 Motorcycle Performance or Service, or I can't remember what it was. But he offered to give me a fully race prepped bike to come down to Ontario and try this race series. So I showed up as a nobody had heard of me, whatever, to go in this series. Never been on the track before, never ridden a 600, raced a 600 before, didn't know the CBR, etc. And went down and won one of the races. And then battled with these girls to come second or third in the other one. But the overarching experience was that, holy crap, these ladies are fast It completely changed my opinion of women's only racing because they race differently. It was some of the most clever, strategic, thoughtful racing that I've ever done. Women are calculated, they're planners.
I was about to ask what the difference was, so this is good.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I know what goes on in my own head when I race, and it was like I was racing against a whole bunch of me's. Whereas I think when you're racing against a bunch of men, sometimes they'll just be like this random balls out freaking blah. Some guy will just pass you. I don't think it's been thought out. I don't think it's been planned. I think they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna go as fast as I can here and see what happens. And
That's exactly what we think.
And that's what I noticed, was that it was calculated. There was a intentional, I'm showing you the wheel here. Now I'm showing you the wheel here. Now I'm planning on where I'm going to pass. And it was intense and it was amazing. And it triggered some more journalistic opportunities because I was very open with my experience. Like, I came in here with an attitude, I fully admit it. And
So you were like that guy back at MotoGP school, right?
yes. I was like, I get it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I understood a different perspective. Like, not all women are as comfortable as I am marching into a room full of men and learning something new. Not all these women had someone to ask questions about. They didn't know how to work on their bikes. They didn't have a mechanic boyfriend that could help them, right? So it gave me a new perspective on why they wanted a more safer environment to come into the sport, to encourage them to branch out and grow. And many of them did go race against the men. So that led into me racing a 600 in a bigger class. And I raced the Canadian Nationals in the women's series that year in 2006. And it was an amazing year of racing. We had incredible support. It was a show up and ride deal for me. It was like wonderful. And then that led into, there was a night when all the Superbike school coaches and Keith Code were sitting and we were watching AMA racing. And there was one girl racing in the AMA 600 class named Jessica Zalewski. And all the guys and, all the coaches were like, it's kind of cool that there's a girl in there, but like, why does the girl always have to be last? Right? Like, that sucks. And I was defending her, saying, who cares if she's last? She's at least out there. Like, it's not easy just to be out on the grid. Like, that's incredible. I wish I could be like her. And that's when Keith looked over and said, well, you're actually faster than her. She came to our school and you could kick her ass. And I was like, hang on, whoa. You mean to tell me that I could qualify for an AMA 600 super sport race and beat the only girl that's racing in there? And Keith was like, yes. And I said, we got to talk. I'm going racing. And that moment was like, I'm going to go race AMA. And so very quickly we put a race series together, approached Kawasaki USA with the support and the word from Keith Code that he believed I would be faster than that one girl. Then that gave me all the confidence and started that process of doing that. So then I spent 2 years, 07 and 08, racing AMA 600, which has a whole bunch of content of all the experiences racing in those series. And then to touch on your question, now that I'm not pro racing anymore, I basically learn and ride and enjoy every style, and I use those as jumping off points for a lot of my articles. So I've done a couple flat track schools. I've learned moto. I ride moto a lot. I started riding enduro. I started riding ADV stuff, moto camping, mountain biking, you name it. If it's got two wheels, I will ride it.
Dang. we just went over so much stuff. It's just like, what direction are we going now?
I don't know.
Right? It's incredible because I'm looking at the clicker here and we're starting to tickle 2 hours. And I'm like, dude, we've got like 2 or 3 more hours left that we
Crazy,
could totally do.
crazy.
Okay, so
So pick
let's
your
back
questions
up here.
carefully.
Yeah. AMA 600. Okay, so you went to Kawasaki and you
Yep.
had some support behind you, and there we are. Go. Like,
And
how
you
did the Kawasaki come aboard? And then, I mean, where were your races? Were they all stateside? Were they up in Canada too, or probably back and forth?
No, all stateside.
Yeah.
So Kawasaki very quickly said, "Yep, let's go for it." And I was given 2 motorcycles to use for the season and a parts credit, which was huge. Um, on top of that, I sourced some other sponsorship, tires this and, help that, et cetera, et cetera. But it still cost an exorbitant amount of money. And basically, if you want to feel very much like you don't belong somewhere, you should show up like I did at Sonoma Raceway with a brand new motorcycle with 0 miles on it, fully stock, with no mechanic, very little support, no idea what I was doing, no concept of what times I could possibly run on this bike that I'd never ridden before, at a race weekend, and have barely 1 day to figure it all out. And I got laughed at, like what are you even thinking you're doing here? There's no chance that whatever setup you've got going here is going to result in you sitting on the grid. And I was like, we'll see about that. But I felt very intimidated. But on the flip side, we parked next to some wonderful people, Hawk Mazada and his mechanic and his friends and his pits. They lent us tools. They helped us with stuff, including little things like, Misty, you still got the stock exhaust on there. You might want to get Leo Vince to come and put your actual exhaust on, and very kindly reminding me of all the things I had no idea what I was doing. And then when I went out on track, there were some people that weren't stoked that there was a slower person out on track, because when I first rode out on track, I was probably 20 seconds, at least 20 seconds slower than I needed to be. 20 seconds, which is
Yeah.
outrageous.
That's like a day and a half in racing.
And guys were passing me this close and throwing their hand up like I was a pylon and trying to shake my nerve. And there was 61 or 62 of us going for 44 spots on the grid. So only 44 spots on the grid, 60 some odd riders trying to get that. In order to make the grid, you have to first qualify at a percentage off the leader's pace. So it was like 110%, which most of the tracks was about 10 seconds off the leader's pace, just very roughly. So that was one, but then also there was only 44 spots on the grid. So over the next few, like we had a Thursday practice, Friday qualifying, Saturday race, I think. So during that day, I had to like dig deep and figure out how I was going to gain some serious time. And I was so lucky. I had Keith Code on the phone with me, walking me through stuff. I had friends that showed up to help be my mechanic. I had Superbike school coaches on hand to remind me of some coaching stuff. And between everybody that supported me on that particular day, I went out for qualifying. This is so vivid for me. I was qualifying and I kept coming in, and my guy was like shaking his head like, no, like, you gotta go faster. You gotta go faster. And I was trying so hard. And finally, a fellow Superbike school coach pulled me aside and he said, stop thinking about it. Make it fun. Misty, you're qualifying for an AMA race. You're here. You should be proud of the fact you're here. Don't let it take away the fun. Go out and enjoy yourself, relax, find the groove, and just have fun. And I was like, okay, he's right. Like, I got to live this moment. And I went out and I swore I went slower. And I came back in. We got the checkered. I rode till qualifying was done. And I came back in and I was shaking my head and I was like, I don't think I made it. I don't think I made it. And they told me then what my time was, and it was much better than I had done before. So I had improved on my time, but we still didn't know what everyone else's were and where I fell on the line. And so then I made someone else go look at the timesheet, and he came back and he was like, okay, Misty, you're in 44th on the grid. So
wow.
I qualified and I was so stoked. You should have heard the pits, like just jumping up and down, screaming, so excited. Step one, we made the grid, my first experience. And while I was miffed that I was last on the grid, I had so many people come up afterwards and say, you know what? You really surprised us and you deserve to be out there because you beat 15 other guys that were, maybe had a better setup and maybe had more experience, but you deserve to be there. And then from there, it was just slow improvements every time. Like, okay, I'm last on the grid, but I am not finishing this race last. So step one was don't finish last, and I didn't. And then every race after that, it was, how do I improve? How do I get better? How do I qualify? How do I push myself? And I got up to my very best race was my favorite track in Ohio, and I got into 19th place after starting very far back on the grid. And sadly, I crashed out after the leader lapped me right at the end and just sucked me into this corner, and I crashed, but I still finished 21st in that race. So my best AMA finish was 21st. I had been in the top 20 over the 2 years, and it was incredible. It was just an incredible experience to get to race at that level with, like, I was racing against Ben Bostrom, like literally racing against Ben Bostrom.
Jeez. What an experience, doing it professionally and being on the circuit. That's awesome.
It was
That's actually fantastic. I'll say the fantastic word for everybody, but
fantastic.
ding. No, what an experience, and just listening to you, how you showed up unprepared, and then just learning and getting faster and making the grids and doing all that stuff is just freaking rad. So,
It was
so you
fun.
did that for, hmm?
I said it was fun, really fun. A lot of fun.
Oh, dude, for real. So yeah, I just duded you. Anyways, um, so you did that for 2 years. You also did a little bit of the flats. You did. I think there's some pictures of you in the air on motocross. I might have stalked your Instagram page for the last couple of days, just kind of preparing for this.
Yep.
You know, um, what was that like going from road and putting your knee on the ground to not being on the ground?
Yeah, that's more been in the last little while because my kid and my husband prefer the motocross. So
Yeah.
that's been more lately as something we can all do as a family. And for sure, motocross is completely different. It's like a lot of it is opposite from how you ride on a road race bike. So that's been really interesting. I'm not super good in the air, but I'm definitely learning how to be better in the air. But it's hard to switch into something like motocross when you're how old I am. So,
Yeah, we're the same age
yeah,
ish.
yeah,
Yeah.
late 40s. I'm gonna say it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to go and learn how to jump a dirt bike when you're, feeling brittle. And, if you see my body right now, it's literally covered in bruises right now from all the crashing that I've done on bikes and such. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's fun.
No, that's pretty cool. And if I don't know much about your husband, but he's a motocross guy. Is that correct? Like he did that?
Yeah, so he used to race pro motocross for
Yeah.
years and years and years. And I don't know if you know the story about how we met, but I was racing an SV 650 at Mission Raceway, and he had a CRF 500, I believe, that he like total modded up. And this thing was fast, like so fast, but in a straight line fast. And in the corners, it went really slow. And so he was really in the way in a race that we had against each other. And I was furious behind him because he would go really fast in a straight line and pull me. And then he would suck in the corners and he was in the way. And I was behind him going like, oh, I wish that guy would get out of the way. And like, oh, I was so frustrated in this race. And so partway through the race, I tried to take an inside line because he would take these stupid supermoto / dirt bike lines that didn't jive with my lines. And so he would go swing wide and sort of square off the corner. And so he went wide to go square off this corner. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to squeak up the inside and pass him and get past him because he was so annoying. And so he went this way and I went to go up, and then he swung in and took out my front wheel. He didn't know I was there. I didn't get by in time. His version of the story is different than mine. Anyway, he took me out and I crashed, and his bike went like this and he kept going. And I was furious. I actually like threw my gloves on the ground and I was like, that guy. And I was so mad. And yeah, so that's how we met.
He met by taking you out. Oh my gosh. That's a heck of a story. I'd be curious to hear his side of things, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with yours.
Yeah.
I'll go with yours. Yeah, for real. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. So I see a lot of pictures of you now and videos of doing the mountain biking and your kid crying. You're like, hey, I need a break. And he gives you like 10 seconds and then he's gone again. you know, I think that's pretty funny. So mountain biking is becoming kind of a family thing, it looks like, with you guys. So and up in your area, I guess there's a lot of it.
Yeah, literally outside of my door. I was looking for more coaching opportunities because I was spending a lot of time in my house working from home, which I don't love. And so just randomly this summer, I was like, oh, let's see if I could learn how to coach mountain biking. And so I got my certification and then got accepted as a riding coach. And so now I'm just doing a ton of mountain bike riding, which is different than what I normally do. But mountain biking and moto and off-road riding have a lot more in common than maybe road racing and those. So I'm finding that it's a really good cross training. So I stay fit and healthy and active with the like mountain biking, and then that
Yeah.
translates to similar body position and style, etc., as some of the off-road stuff that I do.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty cool little cross training, keeping your body going. At
Yeah,
our age, it's pretty important.
we're so old.
I know. So your sister over there, she does a lot of the dual sport stuff. So how often do you get over, not necessarily with her, but do you do more dual sport moto camping? Or is it just a thing that you do when you go over and visit with her? Or is that just something like maybe you're starting to kind of fall in love with and maybe you can do, with your husband or as the kids get older or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that I love everything and I want to do everything, and I have way too many sports and things that I like to do.
Right.
What's been super cool is my sister never rode. Like I've been riding for 23 years, and for 23 years I've been bragging about how awesome motorcycles are. And she never rode, and she has kind of a quite a bit of a different lifestyle than I do. I'm always on the go. I'm always traveling, and she's very content in her beautiful neck of the woods. And so we didn't have a ton in common for many years. When several years ago she was looking for a little dirt bike for her son, I found this little 80cc retro bike. Oh my God, I wanted this so bad. I wish she didn't sell it. It was like the coolest bike. Anyway, I took it over to teach my nephew Lyndon how to ride on it. But this thing was like a beast, and it was a two-stroke, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And the kid didn't love it. But Summer and I jumped on it. We were goofing around, and Summer was like, "Oh, I used to know how to ride a dirt bike years ago." And she jumped on this thing and started zooming around. And she's like, "Motorcycling is so fun." And I was like, "Yes, yes, Summer, I know that." And so I left, and somehow she got interested in riding, and then they bought a Honda 100 for their daughter to try to go on the trails, and then she started going in the trails, and then she was like, "Hey, we like this," and then her and Kevin started getting into it, and next thing you know, she had bought a couple little dirt bikes, and so I went over to her house, and she was like, "Bring your helmet and boots," and I go over to her place, and all of a sudden she's like, "Let's go riding," and she takes me out her house, down some road, and into the foothills, and up we go. And I'm thinking, like, this is incredible. I can't even ride from my house anywhere. We have to load the bikes, and it's this big production. And then I'm riding with my sister. Like, how cool is this? And so then she sort of went a little further and got herself her road license, and then got into dual sport. And so actually my very first, dual sport ride ever was with Summer. She said, "Come on over. You can ride Kevin's bike." And off I went. We rode on the street and then turned a corner and into the hills. And I was like, I've never ridden like this on the street and then turned around and gone into the hills. And how cool is this? And so whenever I can, I go over to visit her. It's a little challenging because I don't have a dual purpose bike. And of course, the ferries and all that is super annoying these days. But now she is usually set up, and I get to be sort of an honorary member in all sorts of fun stuff that she puts on. And what's super cool is, like, I call it the circle of awesomeness. And I've written an article in Motorcycle Mojo about it, is that my friends from so long ago, Scott and Steph, and like some of the people I knew way back when, are now hanging out with my sister and learning from her and enjoying time with her and sharing experiences with her. That it's not a friendship that I ever thought would take place, but I love it so much to see, like, those are my friends hanging out with my sister, and then I can go and meet her friends, and then we can all be friends together, and like the circle of awesomeness just expands. So it's been super rad, and that was actually my first sort of, I've done moto camping more dirt bike style before, but I've never done an ADV adventure moto camping sort of thing, like we did at the Get Lost Find Yourself event. And so that was really eye-opening and fun for me to be introduced to something new by her.
Absolutely. I think, well, first of all, the Critters event was amazing. Hands down. It was just, I've been to a few of those, and that was by far the best one that I've ever been to. But also, Critter and I have become very, very good friends very, very quickly. And it's kind of funny, like, you watch a live or something, and it's like we're getting done. We're like, "All right, dude, I love you. I love you too, man. Okay, bye." It's just he's family, And thinking about, like, when I met you in April was also the first time I met Critter in person. And I just kind of invited myself to the Easter Giver. I'm like, "Oh, I'm coming." you know, and he's like, "I guess you could stay with me. Hey, I guess we can do a live when you get here." So it was awesome. So I got up there, and it's really funny that in the last, 6 months or whatever it's been, uh, meeting you for the first time, your sister and Kevin, and just, lumping everybody into the mix nuts, that's up there. Scott and Steph, especially, some of my best friends are now Islanders, you know, and it's really fun because it really broadens my writing. And like I said earlier, going up there, and there's so many women that are writing up there, and it's so much fun. And I'll get comments on Instagram or on YouTube on people that are just like, "Oh, you're one of my favorite Canadians." I'm like, I'm not, but thank you. I'm actually, I'm an American, but I guess I'm up there and hanging out with you folks a lot, and I just think it's super, super rad. And your sister's just a hilarious human, and she's the best flipper offer I've ever met. She's really good at that, you
Yep.
know. So, but so that the Get Lost was kind of your real first moto camp trip, then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say where, I'm seeing all these, adventure riders coming from different places and, all the gear. I was
Yeah,
we were loving watching that, all the little Instapots and all the fancy gear and all the tiny little tents. And it really is it's an offshoot of, some of the types of riding that I do. And it's fascinating for me to see all the different groups of people having participated in multiple different groups along the way. It's really neat to see, how do adventure riders differ from dirt bike riders or road racers, or what's the commonality? What is it about this type of riding that they gravitate to? What is it about this type of riding that they don't like? What crosses over? What doesn't cross over? Like it's really neat for me to explore the intricacies, especially from a skills and techniques side of things, because I am very focused on the intricacies of how to ride well in multiple different scenarios. I write for Adventure Bike magazine out of the UK. And so I adapt a lot of my road race and road specific articles for adventure bike riding.
that's
But
cool.
I
I didn't know
don't
you did that,
have
man.
a ton of um, ADV experience. So it's nice to take that experience and those I don't know, memories, and be able to impart them into my articles a little bit more, because it is very ADV focused, that magazine. And there's a chance I'll be going to their ADV festival in June. um, yeah, I'm hoping.
Would be awesome. I was just reached out by somebody about an ADV fest, maybe getting an invite to one of those. I was like, I'm like really nobody, right? But yeah,
Ooh,
I'll be there.
nice.
It'd be kind of neat. So
Yeah.
now that you know all the different intricacies of all the different writing, I want to tell you or ask you which one is your favorite, but I don't want to put you on the spot like that. So which one's your favorite?
So which one is it? Um, that's a really tough question, because, I think I would have to say, like, at the heart of my riding will always be the road racing, track
Yeah,
specific, speed part of riding, I think, is what I really gravitate to. Um, for me, the main thing I get out of riding is peace and
yeah,
calm, because in my day-to-day world and in my busy brain, it's very noisy, it's constant, it does not stop. And what I found is that it only stops when I'm riding, but riding at a high level. So even if I'm riding, with friends and it's a social thing and the pace is lower and we're looking at the scenery, like, I'm still busy. But when I go on a racetrack and I am going as fast as I can, that is the only time where there is nothing else going on in my world. And some people get it with yoga and meditation and, paddling or whatever they do to get that peace. For me, it's hard to find unless I'm going at a high rate of speed, because um, then I'm forced to only think about my survival, I guess you could say. So that being said, that's how I achieve a sense of peace, and where probably my heart lies the most, and where I'm the most comfortable and secure in my so-called expertise. That being said, there's nothing I like more than being in a social motorcycle riding environment, whether that is, ADV camping or hanging out motocross riding or, dirt bike camping somewhere. Motorcycles, rad people, nature, exploring, moving, travel. Those are the things that fill my bucket. And you can get that with various different types of riding. It's less about the type of riding. Like, I'll tell anyone, I don't give a shit what bike I'm riding. Just stick me on a bike and I will ride whatever you're riding, wherever you're riding, and still have fun on it.
I think that's awesome. And you hit it, like filling your bucket, right? So, I mean, everybody has a different part of riding that they like, right? You come from the tracks and the high rate of speed, and that's your kind of zen where this is the only thing I'm focused on. And that's the time you find your quiet place, right? For me, it's when I'm doing adventure riding in the woods, when I hit the gravel travel, and whether it's a high rate of speed or it's not, that is just the place where I just get hyper focused. And I find myself laughing inside my own head about my squirrel moments, because I'll be riding down there, and that's kind of a time when I'm able to process some things, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever's going on in life and stuff. And just when I get out there and you're just kind of zoned and you're hyper focused, but your mind is allowed to think, right? You're not judging everything inside your head. So I get down there and I'll be like, okay, so if I do A, then B is really good. Oh my God, look at the trees over there. Look how big those are. Look at that scenery. Okay, but if I do, so my mind is still going, but it's also still, that's my Zen place, and I don't think people take enough time in their busy lives to find whatever their Zen is, whatever hobby it is. And ours is obviously on two wheels, but I think it's very important for us to get out there and get our mind right, if you will, in whatever form. You're probably over 100 miles an hour and I'm probably 50. I don't know, something like that. So, and then with you saying, you've been behind me a couple times riding, and I'm just thinking to myself as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, what is in her head? Oh my God, this guy's doing this wrong and he's doing that wrong, and his hands are here, he's doing this. And why are you standing up right down? Sit down.
I think that's what's good for me about going adventure riding and dirt bike riding, is that I don't wear my coach hat. And that's hard. It's hard to get out of wearing the coach hat when I see things that I'm so used to picking apart. But when I go on these adventure rides or into the forest or the dirt, it's less about helping everybody else and more about just being part of the ride. So don't worry, I'm not looking at how you're riding.
Well, next time I'm gonna ask you now. I'll be like, oh, what am I doing wrong, Misty? Help me out here, because I'm sure we're gonna be riding together somewhere in the next few months, somewhere along the way. I don't know,
I'm
probably again in April.
I'm sure.
Maybe.
And I mean, anyway, like, I really love when people do ask, and, I really love being able to coach. I mean, I think everybody saw the moments of when I was teaching Brittany at Critter's event. She was there as a photographer.
Yeah.
She had all her brand new gear in the car, but she'd never learned to ride. And she
Mhm.
was sort of, feeling a little bit left out, that she didn't know how to ride yet, but she was stoked on her upcoming, lessons. And I said, well, when are your lessons? And she said, well, I couldn't get in till November. And I was like, grab your stuff, I'll teach you. And she was such a willing student. But I think that everybody in the area could tell that, like I just like to do it because it lights me up, because I feel so proud of being able to impart what I know and have learned to someone else, to see them get the joy out of it. And I mean, what a cool experience. I taught this poor girl who is, shorter than I am, on a bike that was too tall, in a scenario that wasn't perfect, in front of all these people and in
Yeah.
the rain, no less. And to run beside her and see her ride a motorcycle for the first time in that event was like one of the most special moments. And the response I got was people saying, well, we could see how you light up. we can see
Oh,
it.
100%.
Right?
100%.
That's it. It's what fuels me, to be able to
Right.
take that. So, I'm able to step back and just enjoy the ride on a lot of scenarios. But if I ever see someone that is struggling or wants my assistance and help, absolutely, I will 100% be keen to do that. But sometimes you have to hold me back because I'm like, it's not okay to just randomly go up to some dude at the at the dirt bike track and tell him how to coach his kid, right? I'm all like, excuse me, could I, oh.
Oh, for real. Sometimes you just want to be out there and you just want to be the dad, or the parent, and you don't want to do the coaching thing. But sometimes you're like, oh, okay. I do remember that time you went out and you definitely were lit up quite a bit when you were over there. I didn't know what was going on at first. What brought my attention to it was kind of a funny story. I'm not going to say any names, um, Matt. Um, he said something. I don't know if he coaches or teaches or something, but he looked at you coaching over there and he said something about why are you doing it this way and not this way. And he's like, I have to go say something. And your sister, I cannot, because YouTube will probably end up like taking this episode down if I said what she said. But it was freaking hilarious. She was just like, "Oh yeah, let's go tell the professional writer, the professional instructor how to do her job." But there was some very well placed profanities within that. It was hilarious. And that's when my attention was like, what is going on right now?
Yep.
And then I saw you over there and then you guys went zipping by and then coming back and stuff. I thought it was pretty rad. And I don't know if you follow Brittany on the old socials, but I think she just had her course like a week or 2, 3 ago or something. I don't know.
Nice. I'll
So
have to,
hopefully she's out riding.
yeah, I'll
And
have to.
maybe she won't be the photographer next year. Maybe she'll be out there as, one of the riders. So,
Participant. We'll see. We'll see. I'm happy to get everybody out riding.
oh, for sure. There's so much interesting things about you. And like, I'm still watching the clicker and I'm just like, there is so much more. So I'm just going to have to say this, like, you're going to have to come back on eventually,
Okay.
and have to
I don't mind.
come back. So, I was kinda laughing because when you gave me a couple of these, like, you gave me 2, right? And, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see that I'm holding up a Motorcycle Mojo magazine. If you're on Spotify right now, you're not watching this, so she gave me a couple magazines, to come home and just kinda check out, and I was wondering, like, does she just carry a stack of these with her everywhere she goes? I was like, "How did I get 2 of these or something?" I don't know. I just remember I put them in my, inside my jacket, zipped up, and just cruised home, and then had to repack at some point and put them in my bags, and I think it's pretty cool. So, obviously, we've touched on a few times. You've talked about you've written for, obviously, Motorcycle Mojo, and then maybe a more adventure-based magazine in the UK.
Yep.
Um, how in the world did you come about to do all of that, start writing and doing things like that?
Yeah, super, super accidental, kind of like the story of my life in riding in general. But when I was doing the business part of things and working to thank my sponsors and keep people apprised of what I was doing, I would write race reports after each race weekend on, the highlights and how the race went and the story of how I got there and my results, etc. And always thanking the sponsors and stuff. And it started with, a small local magazine reached out to me and said, hey, we've been following with your race reports. We really like your style of writing. There's not a lot of women in the industry that do this. Would you like to do some test rides for bikes? And I was like, oh yeah. So I started doing some test rides locally where, hey, can you ride this Buell? Can you write about it? And, it was like Misty says, and then a guy says, his version, and we would have a different take on the bikes. And it was really interesting perspective and really appreciated from a lot of the industry because they didn't have a lot of women journalists writing about bikes and riding skills, and we come from a different perspective, right? Like I am not very tall. I'm 5'3" and I don't touch the ground on most bikes. So when men are writing about bikes, they don't talk about things like that, the reach, the this, how it fits, how you sit on it, what's hard, what's heavy. There's just a different perspective. And so it came
Right.
across, people were enjoying it. I remember I got approached by Sport Bike magazine, and they flew me down to California to test ride a whole bunch of bikes. And there was all these TV cameras and photography set up, and I got paid so much money to do these test rides back then. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Like I'm living in a fairyland. Since then, I don't make that much money writing, but I've kept up, so I started writing for Mojo after they interviewed me actually on my racing. Then they were like, hey, why don't you give a shot at writing a column? And then they liked it. And I've been doing a column since 2007, I think, monthly column.
Okay.
I freelance for a couple other magazines. I've been in Road Racing World a bunch. I've been in, like I said, Sport Bike magazine. Motorcyclist has done a couple of my trips. I went to Spain. I went to Germany, and they printed some of my work. I went to Nepal as part of a charity ride and wrote about that in a couple magazines. And I'm just branching out a little bit more in career wise so that it's not as motorcycle focused. And I just actually landed my biggest and most exciting, it's like a 4-page spread in a magazine called Wired for Adventure. And it was motorcycle related. So I love telling stories. I love taking the adventures that I'm privileged to get to go on and translating those into stories that, showcase the area that I went to, the experience, the people, the event. And it's sort of my way of being able to give back, especially for things like charity rides. I surprised Critter with a column about him when he first, after I met him. I'm always looking for stories to write about. And Summer was the one that said, you should do a story on Critter and his experience with mental health challenges and how motorcycling has influenced that. And I was like, absolutely, let's do that. And then she said, can you do it quick? Because he's going to announce this event. And I was like, perfect, let's keep it quiet. I'll write about it. Give me all the details about the event. We'll publish it and he won't know as long as he won't kill me.
Right.
And then I was able to go and research on, his experience and his story. And I took my perspective of meeting him and what I could read about his story that he shared. And I wrote a column that he didn't know was coming out. And so the magazine arrived and Summer was like, hey, did you read the latest issue? And he's like, yeah, it's here. I got to check it out. And she's like, you should check it out. And he's like, I will. And she's like, you should check it out now. And then he realized that he was in the magazine. And so it's fun for me to be able to use my platform to share other people's stories, because I meet super fascinating people along the way that deserve to have their story told. And now I have a way of doing that. So I really love having a method of saying, I can take that cool information and share it with a big audience, because I have that ability to, to write for these magazines, which is awesome.
I think that's very phenomenal, especially with his story and the impact it's had on so many people, firsthand right here, this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I know I said this before on our live last time we had, but that event, I said something to him on the likes of like, do you think this event is like really helping somebody? Like, I didn't word it that way. I forget how I worded it, but it was basically, do you think this event is going to be helping people? And he just looked at me and goes, it's helping too right now that are here, and I was just like, man, that's his story, his passion and everything, his advocacy for men's mental health is just it's amazing. And then you writing a story about it hopefully brings more people up because it's so important, you know. Man, we're just like, push it down, dude. You're fine. Whatever. You know, suck it
Mhm.
up, man up, right? So I think it's pretty rad-tastic that you did that. And I haven't read that article yet. I knew he was in one, so I'm
It
gonna have
was
to
posted at the event. It was hanging up on the wall. Um, and I'm going to write a follow up with about the event.
nice.
The trick is that while I love writing and storytelling, it's not the easiest career to be in because it's all
Right.
very creative work that requires a certain amount of focus. That word that I struggle with a lot.
That
Um,
that one F word.
is really difficult because I'll be like doo doo doo, and then I'm like squirrel and this and that, and oh go
Mhm.
ride, oh do something else. But also each event that I go to, each experience that I have, each person that I run into, like I take a very um, I don't know, strong emotional connection. And I really give myself to that experience. And so the whole moto camp out event that we went to, like, I gave myself completely to that experience, off grid, not talking to my family, being right integrated with all the people, trying to meet everyone, trying to experience from a different perspective, right? Trying to put myself in a situation where I'm not the center of attention, right? Like I like to rule the roost, but coming in and being an observer on this event because it's not, I'm not meant to be the person. This was so fascinating for me to stand back and observe my sister in this incredible role in supporting, Critter, and how Kevin supported her, and how you guys all come together to make this event. And so my role is an observer to document and catalog all of that. But what it does is it's tricky to convey those types of emotions in words a lot of times. And so
Yeah.
I'll sit down after an event that's heavy, right? Like there's a
Mm.
heaviness to that event because of the subject, because of what we know goes on behind the scenes for people battling mental health issues. And you're bringing it to light, but in a fun environment. Like underneath, it's heavy. And we ride motorcycles and someone got hurt. And, like
Mm.
all of these things are going on. How do I take all of the emotions that occurred and put them into paper in a way that's respectful to everybody involved? It's a daunting task, and I take a great deal of pride in spending the energy needed, but it's also very frustrating at times because I can't get it out. Um, so even now I'm like, it's been this many months. How do I go back? How do I get those feelings? But I need those months to absorb all of the feelings that came along with it. And now I'm seeing the pro photos, and I'm getting the angles, and I'm sort of picking up on the vibes on how am I going to piece this story together that really epitomizes what this is all about. Um, and that's the
Yeah.
challenge of every event that I do, right? Like if I go on a tour, how do I explain what it's like to ride through the streets of Nepal to someone that has never been or will never go? It's a challenge, and yeah, it's fun to do, but heavy.
Yeah.
So,
I think I think trying to put a story together and convey the feeling is so difficult to do. And like I'm working on what is this my well technically it'd be my fourth video, but the third real video about this event. And it's really hard to put together because there's moments that I don't think video or words in a story are going to be able to actually convey, and express the actual emotion and feeling. I think the fires every night, just sitting around the fires and all the different conversations going on. And then, geez, I think you and I had a conversation for like an hour sitting next to each other, just whatever for a while. That was my toque night, by the way. That's when I learned what a toque was.
I always
But
jukes
you know,
handy.
yeah, yeah. Uh yeah, we just call them beanies down here, but I'm calling them toques from now on. Absolutely. But it's just sometimes I'm trying to put a video together and I'm just like, it's just turned into a vlog. It's not, you can't catch that actual feeling, and I did a story first just based on my experience and my struggles and stuff. And then I did that one first, and now I'm trying just to do just the vlogs of it. And it's just like right now I'm just like I'm trying to end one of the episodes and I'm just like I'm not feeling what I want to feel when I watch this video because it's hard to
Hmm.
translate the actual emotion and feelings that we're feeling inside while we're there into a video. You can do some voiceovers or something, but I'm struggling. That's a creative part for me where I just sit there. I'm like, oh, squirrel, and I'll watch it and I'll watch it and I'll watch it and I'll try this and I'll do that and I'll edit this and I'll add this sound or this graphic or whatever. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I got to walk away for a while. So that's what I had to do yesterday. I was just done. I got to walk away for a minute.
But I think
So,
that's part of the creative process, right? Like when you
yeah,
have something as heavy as like, how am I going to convey this 2 week long magical trip that I'm doing in some different part of the
yeah,
world? Where do I even start? You know, over the years, I've been sort of stressed out. Like, should I be taking more notes? Should I be like, what's my process here? And and what I've found really is that if I take notes, the focus is less on the now and the experience. But if I allow it to just arrive, usually I'm whacked on the head by the thing that is
yeah,
the essence of the story. So a good example of that was I went to on a tour called Leod Escapes, where they do motorcycle tour, and then we end up at a track day or series of track days. So it's tour and track time. So you get to ride on the road, which is great, and then you get to go to a racetrack and speed your way through. Sometimes with Troy Corser as the Racing School Europe coach or whatever. Perfect for someone like me, tour and track time. And so we flew into Munich and then we rode into the Italian Alps and we were based at this beautiful little cabin, hotel, castle, villa set in the middle of the Alps. And we did little tours each day from there. And on day 2 or 3, I was really struggling to capture the essence. How am I going to tell this story? What am I going to say? What's the theme? What is my focus? And we were celebrating in the evening that night. We had been joking with the waitresses. Uh, Me and my girlfriend asked to borrow this lady's clothes, and we went and put on like the dresses and the lederhosen. And we came down and surprised everybody in the lobby dressed as like full on German Italian ladies. And we were joking around and there was, drinks flowing, etc. And this man walks into the bar and he looks around and he sees us all and he pulls up and he stands beside me and he's like, "Who are you guys?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm Misty. I'm from Canada. We're with this tour and we're riding motorcycles and blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Yeah, but what are you doing here? Only locals come here. I have never seen anyone from Canada or Australia or the United States here." And I was like that's the whole point. That's the point. And I was like, "Excuse me, can I borrow a pen?" And I was all, and this guy came in and he said, "What are you doing here? And locals don't, or, only locals come here." And I was like, that's the essence of this story. And then it just like exploded out from me based on what he had said. He was flabbergasted that there was Canadians and Australians and Americans in his neck of the woods riding motorcycles. And I've found that, like, with each of the places that I go, there'll be a starting line. There'll be something that I put on the page and I go, how do we fill in the gaps there? So I have a starting point for critters based on a quote that Carl said. When you read
yeah.
you'll figure it out. I'm not going to give it away because I don't know where it's going to go, but I have a line. I have the one line. It's going to propel it, but I just have to get there.
Carl is gold. He will say something and you're just like,
Yep.
yep, that's right. I I have him in a video. I was just watching something. Can't remember if it's already up or whatever, but we were talking about, oh, I was kind of walking around. We were at a Telegraph Cove and I was just kind of telling, we all went on this big ride and I was just going around and I was just like, what was your highlight of the day? Right. 'Cause we went by some lakes, we rode into a cave, and now we're here at this giant tourist place, essentially walking down this boardwalk just after lunch. And everybody is like really deep in their answer, And I go up to Carl. I'm like, Carl, what was your best thing? On my motorcycle. Like, yes.
Yes.
I mean, perfect. Everybody's like, oh, just the real essence of riding here and here. And he was like, riding my motorcycle.
Yep. It's just
Yep.
yeah.
The
There'll
dude
be
is just,
inspiration. There's inspiration all around. You
yeah.
just have to tap into it.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Well, I'm looking at 246 right now.
Unbelievable.
And
How
it's just like,
long?
I know. It's like, I want to know more about Germany. I want to know more about Nepal. I want to know more, you know, and I'm just going to have to say right now, you got to come back, because we have probably another couple hours of just these stories. But one of the things that when we first met, that I was really taken back by, where I figured out, wow, this lady is really a woman of adventure. You were talking about a trip you took with your daughter, and I can't remember, some Scandinavian country, Finland, Norway, something like that.
Bunch of them.
And yeah, well, there you go.
Yep.
I remember you were saying something about like an icebreaker cruise.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And in my mind, I've been on cruises, so I'm thinking like the port of Miami, everybody's walking on these boats and everything. I'm like, "Okay, that's kind of cool. Tour boat, gonna go do an icebreaker thing." But you were like, "Yeah, we took a dog sled there." I was like, "What?" I was just like, "This is probably the raddest thing I've ever heard." So you got to tell at least a little bit of that story on this episode, and then
Okay.
maybe more the next one. But I was just like, dog sled. Freaking rad.
Yes. Okay. So yes, mostly true. You're blending two elements together. There was a
Okay,
dog sled
okay.
day and there was an icebreaker cruise day. They weren't exactly the same day, but they happened very close together. So
Yeah.
basically, my daughter, she's just turned 12. She was 11 at the time. Over the years, I have, I take great pride in being a mom and raising kids. It's not without its struggles. And a lot of the focus has been on assisting my son over these years. There's there's been a lot of attention needed, and sometimes I felt like I had a bit more or a stronger relationship or more energy was going towards my son, and I was a little
Mhm.
bit concerned that the mom and daughter relationship was waning a little bit. And especially at this age, right? I
Right.
wanted close. And so I basically said to each of the kids, if you could go on a trip with just me anywhere in the world, not that I'm 100% going to be able to do this, but what would it be? I was curious. And so my kids are very different. And my son said he wanted to go to Whistler, which is like an hour away. Anywhere in the
Right
world,
there.
Whistler or Russia. And I was like, we're not going to Russia right now. Thank you very much. But maybe one day. And then I said to my daughter, where would she like to go? And without skipping a beat, she said Finland. And she wanted to go to Finland. She likes the Finnish dog, the little Lapin, and she'd heard about the igloos where you could see the northern lights. So
Oh, yeah.
she started researching and looking up stuff that she wanted to do, and I started looking up trips. Now, not being one to just be able to do a simple trip, like go to Finland and come back, like normal people would probably do, I was like, okay, well, we can't fly directly to Finland because you have to go through another European country. So I said, where would she like to go? She said Paris. So I was like, okay, we're going to go to Paris and then we'll go to Finland. But, looking at the map, like Finland is really close to Sweden and it's also really close to Denmark. And my mom is Danish and I've never been. And I was like, we should go to Denmark too. So then I made this huge convoluted trip, which basically went Paris, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and then we just happened to tag along a quick jaunt over to Estonia because why not?
Why not?
So while I was making this whole tour and plan for her, I was typing in adventurous things to do in Finland. And I came across this icebreaker cruise, which basically offers a bus comes and picks you up in this little area in the Santa Claus village in Rovaniemi, Finland, where we were staying. It's a two-hour bus ride. You cross into Sweden, you go to this beautiful port, you get on this giant icebreaker, and you literally crush through the ice out in the Bothnian Sea, out for about an hour, crushing ice the whole way. It was unbelievable. And then it stops in the ice. You get off. You get to walk around the ice, hang out, and then you get to go and put survival suits on and jump into the water at the back of the boat that they've hollowed out for you to do in a full-on survival suit. So we did that. And then she got some special treatment because everybody liked her, and we got to go to the captain's seat. We got to sit in the top, and we got all this special treatment.
Wow.
The guy let us, when everybody else got back on the boat, he let us go around to the very front of the boat in the ice and touch it, whereas nobody else was allowed to do that. So we have this super rad picture of us pretending that we're pushing, like stopping the boat in the ice.
That's cool.
So rad.
Yeah.
And then we went back into Finland, and we could have done, the touristy dog sledding, but I didn't want to do that. So we took a 2 or 3 hour bus to the very, very, very northern tip of Finland, to where there's like 3 people that live there. And we went to this complete wilderness resort and did an epic dog sled tour through the blizzard and snow, and it was very authentic and insane. And then the next day we did snowmobiling, and we had an adventure. But that kid, she got dragged along. It was 18 days, and we did 9 flights, 5 countries, 18 days. She was whooped.
And a trip of a lifetime, it sounds like. What did she think about jumping in the water with the survival suit on?
She thought it was cool. She was stoked. And then we swam, and we were like hugging chunks of ice. And I have videos. I like my YouTube channel, and I got videos that I need to put up. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel. I'm going to put a video of her and us jumping in and doing our trip, because it was pretty astounding and very valuable to the mom and daughter relationship, and to imparting a sense of adventure, travel, appreciation, culture awareness, all the things that travel teaches a young child is so important. So I'm a huge proponent of travel. And I'm lucky that I can make my job is travel, adventure, riding.
Right.
Very.
Yeah. What a phenomenal, like, I just remember, I did blend those 2 stories together, but I just remember when you were telling me about some of this stuff, I was just like, holy crap, this lady is freaking full on adventure. I think it's fantastic. And you just hit the perfect segue because you and I chit chatted, I don't know, a month or 2 months ago or something, and you were talking about wanting to grow your YouTube channel, getting back onto that. I keep putting up on the screen. I'll do it again right here, but this right here, you got a website coming up, mistihurst.com, which is under construction. Building your YouTube, like we already said. So, what are some of the things we can look forward to seeing on your YouTube channel coming up? Because you want to get like everybody, we want to get our hours in. We want to be the monetized. We want to, generate a little bit of the income off of that, especially for you because you've talked about your entrepreneur and like this is what we're doing and a couple other things on the side, but this is kind of your main focus. So, what uh, what are some of the things that we can kind of look forward to here in the near future on the Misty Hurst socials?
I think mainly the message I want to put out and what I want to be is just very real. I want to be myself, and I want to be a resource for parents and moms especially who want to maintain their own lives, their own careers, their own dreams, their own ambitions, while still having a huge focus on being an incredible mom, and also how to bring your kids into the sport of motorcycle riding, or being involved with it, right? I get questions all the time. How did you keep traveling? How do you keep like being a journalist? How do you bring your kids to track days? I mean, I have stories of driving by myself 4 hours with two toddlers in the car, and literally they stayed at the track all day, and it was 38 degrees, and I rode because I was doing a story and mom wanted to ride on the track, and in between I would get off the bike and I would run over, and the kids had to sit in the car with the air conditioning on because it was so hot, and I was playing movies, and then we would take a break and I would play with them, and then we would get ice cream, and then you're not only riding on the track, but then you're momming on the side. And a lot of people were interested in how did I manage to do that. And then with my expertise in all my coaching, I have a lot of content on, how to become a better rider, how to teach kids, how do you know if your kids are ready to ride, how do you adapt this program for super tiny kids, what skills translate, how to improve your riding, your visuals, all of those types of things. So I think I'm going to start sharing, videos of the tracks that I've ridden around the world, snippets of places I've been, trips I've gone on, tips on how to teach kids, and link back to, MistiHurst.com, where I'm going to have the blog of the previous articles and new articles that are always coming out, so that we can take stuff that's been written in the past and present it in a new format that's available, for people to learn off of it. And basically, I don't want it to be too polished. I just want to be like, hey, just ride along with me on what I do and how I raise my kids. And if you like it, you like it. Awesome. And hopefully you can learn something and reach out. And if you have any questions, like, I love answering questions. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I think I'll put this up again real quick, but I think you're really onto something here because I've seemed to have gotten on your IG, I don't know, a little while ago. I think probably right around the time we went up in September up to your neck of the woods. And then I got on there again, like I said, doing some show prep for this. I was totally stalking your socials, and it seems like your Instagram kind of blown up a little bit lately. Seems like you have a lot of followers on there from, I don't remember what it was, but I looked today and I was like, whoa, that's definitely some growth right there.
Yeah.
So hopefully the YouTube is doing something, the Misty Hurst at YouTube. So like, subscribe, share to her right there.
I'll
You
just
got
let
to
them
do
do
it right.
that.
You know, So yeah, follow her, Misty Hurst Racing on the Instagrams, Misty Hurst on the YouTubers, and then it's Misty Hurst Racing on the Facebooks too, right?
Yep.
So it's all right there. If you're watching it on YouTube, it's on the ticker tape, and if not, I read it for you, so you can go find it if you're on Spotify. But it's probably a good time to hit because we are literally 10 seconds away from hitting the 3 hour mark.
That's insane. I cannot believe. And look at me, I stayed put. I got all my little fidgets.
Oh, it's fantastic.
With, and I stayed put for 3 hours. That's unbelievable.
I know, right? So, Missy, I really appreciate you coming on here, like more than I can say. I think this whole thing, I'm just trying to get it off the ground, and having people like yourself that are somebody that we can look up to as role models and are just very interesting people, is worth telling everybody's stories and everybody's history and everything. And like I've said, there's so much more about you that I want to know. And a few months down the road or something, I'd love to have you back on. We can see how the YouTube's doing, how everything else is going. But definitely, I want to hear about some more of your trips, especially the Nepal one. I think that would be super rad.
Cool.
So,
And
anything you want to say? Anything you want to plug?
I might have a new trip coming up that I can tell you all about after.
I know I've got an announcement that's going to be made here shortly, and I'm just dying to talk about it, but I can't yet. I'm just like, dang it. So
soon.
I know. So we're going to go ahead and just end things here. So thanks for listening, and until next time, eat more pancakes.
Thank you.